Sword of Coming Chapter 1200. Chapter 1200. The master asks himself. In the mountain temple very close to Xianxia Bai, a rustic rickety old man was busy in the kitchen, wearing an apron, and the chopping board was making a noise like pounding clothes. Because the goddess of the mountain, who never entertains guests, brought such an old guy back to the mountain for the first time, and she even leaned against the door and looked at the old man in the house with affection. This caused the old and young female ghost maids in the temple to stand far away and look at each other. Could it be that my own mountain goddess found her father? Julien didn't turn his head, just skillfully placed the piles of condiments in the exquisite small bowls made by the manufacturing office in his home country, and said with a smile, "Monsieur, in fact, I don't have any worries about leaving my hometown or the pain of losing my country. The sadness of thorns, the feeling of separation, these are none of these. Originally, I had no regrets in my life, so what else would I care about after my death? Therefore, if you are worried for me, I will feel that it is a new word for me to express my sorrow. You can't do it, really, don't frown, and it won't look good to others." Xiatao just stared at him blankly, not saying anything, just words. Back then, Xiatao, who was born in a first-class aristocratic family in the previous dynasty, or even a family girl, could not want to marry the emperor's heir. In her teenage years, it was the first time she saw a neighbor from a neighboring country that she thought was very good at making a name for himself. Julienne Xiatao was in the middle of a mountain in her own home. After a heavy snowfall, she had nothing to do, leaned on the railing and looked at the picture opposite. Because she has excellent martial arts qualifications, and there are masters in the family who give advice, and one of her uncles is a famous martial arts master in the world, so she learned a good martial arts when she was a girl. Even the one who never took it easy, the uncle who praised people, said that she had already entered the room all the way in the martial arts, so Xiatao's eyesight was quite good, so he could roughly see the men and women in the adjacent mountain not far away. The noble son of an aristocratic family, wearing a fox fur and dragging a cane to climb the mountain, walks among the pine, cloud, bamboo and snow in the Mao forest. On the way back down the mountain, there is a heavy snowfall, the mountains are jade standing, the ice mirror is shining brightly. The noble man uses a bamboo stick to clear the goose feather heavy snow. The maid behind him sings the green words and sings while stepping on the snow. No matter what her original intentions and thoughts were at that time, she ran to the foot of the mountain to block the road anyway. Just this stop, it stopped the infinite feelings of regret later. You shouldn't see him, you shouldn't think like that. Xiatao has been rambling between two thoughts all his life. Only when you get to know him and get along day and night will you truly understand him. He really knows everything and is extremely proficient. But he never minds embarrassing himself. For example, when he eats spicy food, he will shiver all over and soon his face will be flushed, but he will not admit defeat. Every time I complain, I bring up some unpleasant things and people who are not pleasing to the eye will swear, and at the same time, I will make a lifelike straw man, shouting heavenly and earthly, taking a needle after poking and poking again, writing like a fly, writing a letter asking about how so-and-so has been doing recently. There are few maids in this mountain temple, and Xiatao is also unwilling to let nearby men and women enter the temple to burn incense, not only because she likes tranquility, but she is also helpless. Talent springs up, and wonderful brushwork produces flowers? Or are you looking for marriage to have an early child? Julien asked. There is so much incense in the temple, there is nothing, and it is not enough to rely on a mountain and water luck to stabilize the golden body, right? Xiatao returned to his senses, nodded and said, "The golden statue of the swayed occasionally. I didn't take it seriously. I just frightened a few of them and prevented them from sleeping peacefully for all these years." Julien smiled and said, "I don't have the face to ask for something like gold and copper coins. Besides, this is just a shortcut, and it can't be regarded as a real source of incense. Since Miss Xia has good talent in martial arts, she was half a housekeeper back then. People, such a big family, you have taken care of them in an orderly manner, then there are a large group of assholes, hundreds of people, they never worry about money, you might as well pay a little less to the affairs of literary and military affairs and wealth. Kung Fu, if you don't like killing people in the rivers and lakes, and you don't want to be too involved with the guizhou brought by Wu Yun, and you don't like businessmen who are covered in copper smells coming here, then let the scholars come to the temple to ask for an imperial examination." Well, Xiatao shook his head and said, "I don't have the heart to do these things. I was busy with these things in my last life. In this life I will repeat the old tricks. It seems to be walking the old way, why bother? Oh, thank you girl, one bite at a time, I will do the opposite of what you say. People are old people, worry is new worry, last night the moon is the old moon, today is a new day." So Xiatao began to wonder if he was dreaming. Did you really see Julien like this? Didn't you find Zhu Lang yourself? Those maids in the mountain temple who are most aware of the indifferent temperament of their own mountain goddess, they start to look at me and look at you again. It is really of a day. How holy is that old man with shabby clothes and cloth shoes on his feet, who can make his master smile, and when he talks to others he is so angry, and has a human touch. Julien sat on the small bench by the stove, picked up the fire-breathing bamboo tube, shook it and turned it upside down. It was probably a decoration all the year round and it was all dust. Then he took out the fire zither and a piece of fragrance from his sleeve. The overflowing pine resin turned his head and joked, "My girl Xia, don't be so downhearted. Do you really have to eat a full meal to have strength? Being able to become as a heroic spirit, what a blessing. Look at me again. I got up early in the morning and went to a late show, but I didn't catch anything. Well, I can't say that. In the end I found a hometown of peace of mind. Governance and peace. I have nothing to do when I have time, and when I have time, I will find someone to drink a little wine with. Isn't it better than God's?" Xia Tao squinted his eyes and smiled, but his mouth was weak and sickly and said, "Busy to and fro, whether to be busy or not. What are you planning? Please Mr. Zhu, give me a reason?" After using such a name, Xia Tao broke down without restraint. It was really funny and he laughed to himself. Julien smiled and said, "The gods of mountains and rivers also have a genealogy of gold and jade and the level of their gods. When your golden body is as high as a golden elixir, I will take you out for a walk and have a look, and then you will know I sigh that the ancients did not deceive me, and those who are nostalgic for their hometown may have to admit that there are no such good rivers and mountains in their hometown." Xia Tao asked curiously, "What place is that, and who is the son you are talking about?" Julien didn't give a definite answer but just smiled. "Why do you need to ask more questions? You will know when you go." Guyuexian on Luodai Island, Xiego sat on the railing, dangling his legs, stretched out his hand and yawned and said with a smile, "It's no fun to make a little trouble. A large wooden view of an autumn lake, messy council members, warrior monks and strange gods, adding together can make up something. Instead she just slashed down, not to mention alive. The entire Demogwin was completely razed to the ground. Change a group of more obedient people to fill the vacancy and participate in the second discussion. Who dares to object? Although Qin Shanzhu has been under pressure, but he has not started killing, so in Xiego's eyes, he is naturally a stubborn bear child who is arrogant and screaming. The spitting child should be well behaved or he will be beaten. It's just that in Xiego's eyes this liveliness is indeed not lively enough. Xiego hurriedly added, "Compared to the last time our mountain master opened to you a mountain with his sword, the culprit of the big demon was hand-slayed, and he was convinced that he lost and then cut his head. It's a bit far behind. Master is like firing a very fine piece of porcelain. You must be careful because the slightest mistake will lead to a tragic situation." Guizhuzhou thought for a while and explained, "There is the grandeur of the mountain, and the needlework and the meticulousness of the needlework. In fact, the two are not as difficult as you think. Of course, this is also a knot of master's heart, and it is difficult to truly recognizing oneself as a pure sword cultivator is simply because of identity, so it is not easy to take action. After all, this blessed land has devoted too much effort to Luapa Mountain. I also put a lot of thought into this blessed land. That's why Master doesn't even want to regard the blessed land as the second place in Xinjiang Mountain and use swordsmanship to dismantle it. But it really off the Master, replaying Julien's battle in the capital of Nanyuan Kingdom 100 years ago, taking out the mentality of one person becoming the enemy of the world, suppressing the realm, killing the realm, breaking the realm, and returning to the level of martial arts." Xiego Xiaoji nodded vigorously. "As soon as Alliance leader Gui said this, I became more aware of Bai Qin Shan's good intentions. Understandable, but she still doesn't accept Qin Ping's method. It's too gentle. It's fortunate that you are still a close disciple of Wensheng, so you have such high hopes for human nature." Changming smiled and said, "A few words to add. According to the metaphor of bamboo wine, smashing soil and kneading mud to make porcelain, the whole Fuji mountains and rivers are porcelain soil, the world is the kiln mouth, the chi of civil and martial arts and the aura of heaven and earth are the kiln fire. Paradigm fires the same piece of porcelain over and over again, but it's not the case. There is only one piece of porcelain. It's like a broken mirror that is hard to be reunited, a broken heart, and it's hard to restore it to its original state. But in this process, it is bound to be a turmoil, and the cultivation of the world for decades or even more than 100 years cannot restore vitality, so this is the difficulty." Zhuzhou just described the mountain master as needlework, which is very appropriate. The repairing and bonding, bisque firing and internal and external glazing will all involve people's hearts. Among them, ordinary masters are the inner glaze, which is inconspicuous, and qi refiners and landscape gods are the outer glaze, which is bright and beautiful, so there is a lake in this autumn. The mountain discussion is to negotiate a monarch's agreement recognized by both parties from top to bottom, from point to face, so that the whole world of blessed land can have a stable world under the mountain, and at the same time give the greatest degree of freedom on the mountain. The lotus root blessed land came from the lotus flower blessed land. There are too many problems left over from history. Now, in the eyes of local qi refiners in the blessed land, our Luapa mountain is almost the same as an exiled immortal. The two golds were brought out of the blessed land and placed in Luopao mountain, hoping to make a proper and sincere cut. During the porcelain firing process, the residual mud at the grouting mouth of the blank should be removed cleanly, and it should be smooth and even. Scraping off edges and corners and filling gaps are all delicate tasks that can't go wrong. After that, the owner of the mountain still has things such as glazing and planing. We are outsiders and we will wait and see. Xiego supported the mink hat. In the final analysis, Qin Pingan is unwilling to be punished without teaching. I hope that a few die less, and it is best to keep people alive both up and down the mountain. It really isn't enough for sword cultivators. It's no wonder that on the streets of Dallas capital, she would say, "You are pure sword cultivators." To Xiaomo, Qin Pingan may have said it unintentionally, but if the listener is interested, Xiaomo will be sad. When Xiaomo was sad, she felt bad in her heart. Changming let out a sigh and said with a complicated expression, "Miss Ye, this metaphor of mine is just a light-hearted expression, only the edges and corners that have been erased. There will not be a few dozens, hundreds of Guling and Jianghuan. Will there be more xianxia in this world? If you don't kill Xuanhuan today, what about the day after tomorrow?" He was not stopped by the mountain master. If he died, will his friends and relatives seek revenge? When Zhou Shuzhen died, what would the Qi trainers and warriors who admired the building think? Xiego gritted his teeth and said, "Allow me to tell you what's in your heart, even if you have heard it, the long-lived Taoist friend, don't keep an account. Why should the mountain owner be such a mother-in-law and mother? This is called a ghost who cannot be persuaded by the gods to seek death. Whether it is today or in the future, all those who are seeking death on their own will be killed if they kill them. The matter has come to this point and I have to kill with a clear conscience. No matter how small this blessed land is, there are still so many people. Hundreds and thousands of people died, what is it? Anyway, I haven't wronged 1.5 of them. It's better than being merciful now. It caused more dead people in the whole world, okay? So let me tell you that Lu Su is more clear and persuaded Qin Pingan by the river, don't be soft-hearted. You two talk about it, is this a fan of the authorities? Bystanders clear? Guizhuzhou smiled as if she was confident, she had confidence in her master. But Xiego was Xiego after all, and he noticed the little girl's worry. Changxing hesitated for a while, but still did not reveal more inside information to Xiego and Guizhuzhou. Even if she has a decision in her heart, she will train Guizhuzhou as the next Luopao Mountain's discipline, but it's just that the haste is not enough, so she won't pull the seedlings and encourage her, lest the little girl's mind be too heavy and delay sword practice. Previously, Jiang Shangzhen and the chief worshipped Jiang Shangzhen in Julien's courtyard, and then they took Wei Wenlong at the helm of Xuanfu, who rarely walked out of the account room, and a few of them. In fact, there was a small debate. I don't know who made the first statement, and compared them to the 4 giants of Luapa Mountain. Except for Chief Zhou, who was very happy, the other 3 people didn't like this statement very much. Jiang Shangzhen said that this is a game left by the old Guanju to our mountain master. Thousands of miles on the line, just want to make the situation of Luopao Mountain, which is a brand new blessed land, God, become by Yujing of the Qingming world, and to make Qin Shanzhu have to become the headmaster you. If you accidentally lose the whole game, the difficulty is difficult. As long as the game is broken this time and the result does not meet the expectations of Qin Shanzhu, then his inevitable questioning sword in the future by Yujing has already been done now. Lost. Yudo is in charge of one of the 14 states of the Qingming world. You Qin Pingan are only in charge of a small blessed land, and you are in a mess inferior to Yudo. In the future you will still have the face to ask Gen Yudo. The world is messed up by one's own selfishness and there are countless dead people. You Qin Pingan have 1,000 legitimate reasons for repaying your grievances. Standing leaning on a railing, Long Life squinted his eyes. If the situation forces him, the mountain master will not be able to break the situation. Luopa Mountain must kill people without error so that no one in the world dares to make mistakes. Then let me do this as the law of Luopa Mountain. In the Demogwin, only Qin Pingan was seated alone and he said straight to the point, being able to overcome people's potential and practice the way to overcome people. Victory over people is not all about strength, but more in the heart and action, Tao and reason. In short, he is telling this blessed land where no one knows the true background of Luobao Mountain, whether it is intrigue or pure fighting strength, you have no chance of winning. Qin Pingan stretched out a palm. Heaven's heart is very bright, just to seek justice for the world. The head of the Hushan sect, Gao Jun, fellow Taoist, please take your seat with me. Gao Jun hesitated for a while, but still bowed his head and sat down silently. It was still the seat of confrontation between the North and the South, but when she sat down, it seemed that she had formed an alliance with Luopao Mountain. However, in order to take into account the overall situation and take a long-term view, Gao Jun had to obey orders and sit down again, lest Qin Pingan and Luo Pashan would not speak the truth at all. In fact, from Jiang Quan's appearance to Zhou Shuzhen and Chao Ni's first move, Gao Jun did not expect it. As for the actions of a Qi cultivator and a martial artist, Gao Jun felt helpless, thanks to Qin Pingan. Without making a fuss, she took advantage of the situation to take out her anger on her, the Hushan faction, and the entire Demugwan Council members, which affected the whole world like a broken house leaking air from all sides. How did she end up with a golden pill? Qin Pingan's opening remarks have a lot of meaning. The Book of Taoism has a cloud. When morality is lost, there is benevolence and righteousness. When benevolence and righteousness are lost, there is etiquette. The prophecy is to be verified by future generations. A saint will emerge once every 500 years, act for the heavens and set things right. I dare to ask you, who is the saint now? Gao Jun remained silent. How dare she pretend to be a saint who is born every 500 years? I am afraid that no one would dare to answer Qin Pingan's question except the master Yu Xian sitting here. Successful in practice with both virtue and virtue, everyone can be this saint. If virtue doesn't match and steals from high places, everyone can be not. Qin Pingan looked at the 2 rows of positions and asked himself, if today's discussions are just like the beginning, then it will be very simple and I will occupy this position. From now on, hundreds of years and thousands of years, the world will go trends based on my personal preference alone, at the disposal of Luo Pashan. Still in the spring, the atmosphere of Demugwan is as chilling as the cold autumn. It just so happened that a leaf fell from a high place, swaying and swaying, as if it was some kind of answer to the sword immortal in blue. Qin Pingan raised his sleeves, stretched out his fingers and pinched the green leaves and said indifferently, to become a saint, you need to know what a saint is. To know what a saint is, you need to know what a man is and what he is human nature, what is the beginning of human nature. Therefore there are sages who say that people are good in nature, and there are sages who say that people's nature is evil, and those who are good are false. Ask your lords which is right and wrong. In the past years, in the blessed land of lotus flowers, the knowledge of the 3 religions and 100 schools of thought spread widely. Because there has never been a country with a surname that unified the world, there is no pattern in which a certain school of learning dominates. Confucianism, Buddhism, Taoism, legalism, Zhongheng and merchants are all widely circulated here, but under the deliberate arrangement of the master of Bixiao Cave in Luobaotan, the classics and sage books of the vast world have not been widely circulated in the blessed land. Some ignorant exiled immortals who like to be in the officialdom try to be lazy, do a little trick to let the engraving bookstore publish books in batches, and then apply their own names. Occasionally there are such signs, but they are also snuffed out by the old guard. These exiled immortals who knowingly committed crimes fell into the hands of the old master, and it is natural to imagine what will happen. Qin Pingan said slowly, it is human nature to have a full appetite, to have more than 3 meals a day, to have warm clothes, to have beautiful embroidery, to be driven by horses and carriages, to ride clouds and fog, to cross mountains and rivers like crossing ditches. Jifeng, I want to be rich again, I want to be the best in the world, I want to study, I want to be an official, I want to be the master of the people, I want to live in the world. I want to live a long life, I want to be immortal, I want to prove Tao and live forever, and I want to live with heaven and earth. The poor wish to be rich, the poor wish to be noble, the old wish to be young, the dead wish to be reborn, the gods wish the golden body to be immortal, the poor for many lifetimes and the lack of human hearts, the normal feelings of human beings and the normal state of the world. Therefore I have farmland and a family house, there is wealth, family and country and the world. Then I cooperates with people, fights, has fellowship, fights, chooses things, gains and losses of things, ups and downs of heart, behaves in the world, etiquette and impoliteness, orderly family governance, law and lawlessness, 2 armies confrontation, righteousness and unrighteousness, and therefore there are life and death in the human world, all beings have blessings and misfortunes, the world has chaos and the world is good and bad. Several 5 mountain monarchs seemed to be thoughtful. Among them, Song Huaibao, who was lazy, turned his head and glanced at the sword fairy in blue, who was sitting like a so-called corpse in a Taoist book. Dongyue Mountain Jun Zheng Fengzhou found a more interesting place. It seems that Qin Jianxian of Luopa Mountain collectively refers to all the members of the discussion by people. But Wu Kei, an old warrior who couldn't cultivate immortality, almost fell asleep and felt drowsy, so he had to close his eyes and rest. Sun Wanyin raised her hand and seemed to want to yawn, but she quickly realized that it was inappropriate, and put it down gently. On the contrary, it was Chao and I who made a big joke. Hearing this, not to mention martial arts, even Qi cultivators thought it was boring. This swordsman who likes to walk around the rivers and lakes and visit mountains to find the way, became more and more calm. Chen Pingan put the green leaves on the chair handle, wrapped his arms around his sleeves and smiled. I would like to ask all the lords here to stop thinking temporarily. Might as well ask yourself first, what is cultivating the Tao? Taoism and supernatural powers? What is the difference between farming in the countryside, hundreds of craftsmanship, and the learning of sages and sons? Finally, someone answered Qin Pingan's question for the first time. It was the childish boy Shan Jun who was dressed in strange clothes. He said solemnly, there is no difference in essence, but there are slight differences. Indispensable. Qin Pingan smiled and said, no matter how good the answer is in the book, it is not what you really know. Don't worry, think about it again. By the way, Mr. Huaishan reminded that the general statement of the high house is not the same as the one from the bottom to the top. Trivial deductions can be the truth. Waifu nodded. Master Jade was very annoyed. His motherfucker, this kid Waifu grabbed the top spot. Knowing that he was the first to speak, to talk about these mysterious conversations, he is good at it. Qin Pingan continued, everyone needs to know the weight of a rare human body. Once you have a human body, you are very lucky. If you focus on learning, focus on your thoughts, think about what you can observe, accumulate good things over time, and keep on accumulating good things. Therefore, saints are nothing more than people, ghosts, gods, spirits, and monsters. They have a clear sequence and they move forward steadily. They accumulate. If you are a monk or a god, a ghost or a mythical creature, you will not be able to obtain the Tao. Hundreds of living techniques. No matter if you are a ghost with a clear mind and a clear mind, you will be able to do the Tao instead. Holding the whisk in his hand, Master Jade Ultima stood solemnly, and found that the sword immortal in the blue shirt seemed to glance at him. Shan Jun, who was talking about a game, was suddenly silent, and he didn't dare to speak indiscriminately, dispelling the idea of being close. Qin Pingan smiled and said, of course the sages have taught, nonsense words, unseen actions, unheard of tricks, gentlemen be careful. Stretching his finger to the sky, Qin Pingan smiled and said, there was a master who talked about the sky, the stars revolved, the sun and the moon rose, the 4 dynasties were in control, the yin and yang were transformed, the wind and rain were bountiful, and all things lived in harmony with each other. It is cultivated to be successful, and it is called God if it is not seen. It is called God. Everyone knows why it is done, but it is invisible. It is called heaven. Heaven and earth are combined and all things are born. Stars, mountains and rivers, 24 solar terms and 72 seasons, assuming that the premise is correct, since people are among them before climbing, my monks after climbing, how should we behave? After a moment of silence, Qin Pingan said, the sage of merit who created and sheltered this place for many years taught you what the Tao is impermanent, so that you must be in awe of the world outside the human body, and there are sages in the outside world who say that the actions of heaven are permanent, and that of people. It's a godsend. At this moment, Dongyue Shanjun in green robe and golden armor opened his mouth and said, Mr. Qin asked me earlier, let me dare to say that human nature is inherently good and human nature is inherently evil. The two views seem to be extremes of each other, and water and fire are incompatible. Saying that it is not necessarily incompatible, expanding the 4 ends, asking them to rest assured, correcting human nature, and perfecting the morality of the whole way is cultivation. Is it an incense sacrifice and it is still a humane rather than a ghost thing? After asking a question, the mountain monarch didn't wait for Qin Pingan to answer, and asked another question. Mr. Qin, can I roughly understand that man will conquer the sky? Qin Pingan smiled and said, that's right. Xiaoyuan said solemnly, teach me. Qin Pingan stretched out a palm and said with a smile, Dongyue Xiaoyuan, Daoyu Xiao can take your seat. Xiaoyuan clasped his fists and saluted, and sat down with a smile. The iron armor rattled loudly, and the outer green robe slightly fluttered like clouds and water patterns. I was confused, there were a lot of people. It just feels more and more boring and sleepy. Apart from being impatient, the only thing they have in common is that they regret coming to this muddy water one by one. If Gao Jun had made it clear in advance, They would have known that they would confront Xianxia as an enemy during the discussion in Demugwan today. Don't say please, beg them not to come. Song Huaibao suddenly asked a seemingly impossible question, and the question was quite interesting, which made many sleepy people interested and curious about the answer. It's a wooden boat that has been patched up. Year after year all the parts have been replaced. Dare I ask if this boat is still the same thing? Qin Pingan smiled and said, if a country is orthodox or not, it only depends on whether it has both name and reality. If one is lacking, the country is not righteous. By analogy, this ship belongs to the discord between name and reality. If it comes first, then it is wrong, and if the name comes first, it is Song Shanjun. Can you understand? Song Huaibao suddenly realized, clasped his fists and said, pull the clouds and see the sun, be taught and taught. After a moment of silence, he carefully asked, Mr. Qin, can I take a seat? Qin Pingan squinted and smiled. What do you think? Song Hui was embarrassed a little, so naturally he didn't dare to say anything. It just happened to follow Song Shanjun's question to extend something. Qin Pingan's tone was calm and he said slowly, in today's world, names are confused, names of punishments, titles and literary names are all from ancient times, and scattered names are from customs, scattered and scattered, migrated and changed old cases and used new names, and added for all things. Strange words arise and the name and reality are confused. If the name is not correct, the words will not go well, and if the words are not correct, things will not come true. Although all things are numerous, they have a common name. It is a big name and it is different and it is different. As for no difference, it will come later. Alien shapes are centrifugal and cross metaphors, and the name of foreign objects is really mysterious. Therefore what they do is famous. Don't notice. It's just about conferring the names of people in the world. I'm a guest and I won't do anything else, but I can do my best. I'll just say two things just for your reference. First of all, let's talk about martial arts in the world with the people who are studying martial arts here, the high and low divisions of many realms, and the definitions of their corresponding names. As soon as this statement came out, Chao and I, Wu Kei and other martial arts masters were all shocked, and instantly became lively for fear of missing a word. And some old warriors who turned to mountain climbing to practice immortality, such as Tang Tie, Arms Saint Ching Yuanshan and others, also quickly cheered up and listened. Even those chi refiners feel that they are finally getting to the point. They can barely listen to it and see what kind of medicine can be sold in the gourd. The dog skin plaster, or is it really a panacea that can benefit the world's martial arts? Qin Pingan said, the 9 realms of the martial arts, the 3 realms of refining the body, refining the energy, refining the spirit, progressing step by step, the speed depends on the individual, but the speed is not absolutely good or bad, the key only depends on the muscles and bones. The tenacity of chi and blood, whether the boxing technique can raise the spirit, otherwise it is a pure martial artist with an empty state, but a paper-clad physique, fighting with the martial arts fellow in the same realm, vulnerable to a single blow, and holding a magic weapon and spiritual weapon. The chi cultivators on the mountain who can call the wind and call the rain, will lose without a doubt. Therefore, the genius of martial arts will endure more hardship and be more realistic than the genius of cultivating Taoism in the mountains, and is slightly inferior to its name. Chao and I and other martial arts masters all felt that the other party's opinion was quite good, especially the last sentence, which was the most reasonable. Wu Kei was on a whim and had no distractions in his mind, so he just blurted out and said, Qin Jianxian, if my martial arts masters practice martial arts to the realm of transformation, can they use their fists and feet to suppress the chi warriors? Qin Pingan smiled and said, it's a good question. Did I just ask you all to get up from your seats? Or did I use the legendary sword pill to hold your heads? Wu Kei sneered at first, then grinned, clasped his fists and said loudly, that's right. Damn it, I never thought that this, Qin Jianxian, was still my own family, so I was so happy. It was a breath of bird energy that I had accumulated for many years. It's amazing to be on the mountain, isn't it? Qin Pingan continued, among them the 3 realms of body refining are mud embryo, wooden body, and mercury. Afterwards, the 3 realms of chi refining, the key lies in soul and guts, hence the name heroic soul and martial art. It is to raise a martial art in the 6 realms. It is the most important thing. It has always been regarded as the hub of the pure infuriating chi of the martial arts. Martial arts climb to the top of the mountain. Chi refiners, you might as well ask yourself again, what is your martial art, where did you get it, and then you name it in private, maybe you will be pleasantly surprised. 3 realms of refining God, golden body also known as King Kong. Traveling far away also known as covering the ground. Mountaintop. On the top of the 9th realm, There are still 10 realms, the name is the limit, which means that the warrior has stopped here. But the end is divided into 3 levels, namely vigor, return to truth, and God. Wufu is really about to stop here and come to the end of a dead-end road? Not all, there is still a legend above the 10 realms but called the God of War. This is the real clearing the clouds and seeing the sun. For a while there was no sound in the Demogwon, except for the slight sound of breathing. A heroic woman standing beside the swordsman Xuanhuan. She is 50 years old, but she has the appearance of a woman. She has never carried a weapon and she spoke for the first time. Dare to ask Mr. Chen, as the #1 person in the world, Zhong Chen, what realm is it? Now it's a golden realm? Our first Bell Grandmaster just rolled his eyes when he heard the words. Chen Pingan nodded and said, Zhong Chen is indeed the first pure martial artist with a golden body in your world. Back then, Yu Jini and Chongqiu like you now stopped in the martial arts realm and could not break the bottleneck. But the fact is in the past, Ding Ying and a certain Jianghu predecessor before Ding Ying have all entered the 7th realm, but they have nothing to do with pure, so they are not recognized by the great Tao of heaven and earth. In my opinion, there is only one person. It can be regarded as the first pure warrior in the golden body before Zhong Qian, who was the one who tried to open the sky by flying up with a sword, on the right side of Sui. Master Sui is the person who the younger generation admires most in his life. The woman was in a good mood and she clasped her fists and said, By the way, I forgot to register with Mr. Chen. My name is Heroicjourney and I come from the countryside of Jianghu, Songlai country. There are always good people who like to make random comments on the 10 people in the world in history. They are pieced together from different dynasties and generations. Your son Zhu Lian and the demon Ding Ying are both firmly in the top 3. There is no objection in the rivers and lakes. Who is second, but about only 1 seat left, almost no one has put Sui right side in it. Heroicjourney felt that it was wrong but he couldn't argue with them about this. Well, now we finally have a conclusion. You guys deliberately look down on the big men on the right side of Sui just because of selfishness. Who else is not convinced? Qin Pingan smiled and clasped her fists in return. If I don't know this, why should I say the last sentence? Heroicjourney asked cautiously, Ask the bold Mr. Chen again, where is Mr. Chen's martial arts realm now? Mud embryo, wooden body, Mercury. Heroic soul, martial courage. Golden body, far travel, mountaintop. The 3 layers of the end are full of vigor, return to the truth and God arrives. Finally achieve the realm of the of war. Qin Pingan answered truthfully, It used to be the first floor of the end, and it was not long ago that it fell into a state of vigor. Heroicjourney nodded and sat down subconsciously, but she suddenly noticed something was wrong and her face was embarrassed. She wanted to get up immediately. I never thought that the sword immortal in the blue shirt stretched out his hand and pressed it twice and said with a smile, Master, he just sits down. Song Huaibao looked at the appearance of Heroicjourney. She was more than 10 or 20 years younger. She couldn't be said to be a great beauty now? He slandered, Xianxian's taste is a bit tricky. In an instant, Song Huaibao saw that Qin Pingan's joking gaze had stagnated on him. Song Huaibao had no choice but to clasp his fists with both hands and shake it vigorously for a few times, as he made up for this sword immortal, and he didn't dare to think about it anymore. Qin Pingan waved his sleeves, and a mysterious situation map of the human world appeared on the Bayou Square. A standing picture, shining, bones and muscles like mountains, meridians like rivers, qi and blood surging like rivers rolling, along the ways wuxiao acupoints like gates, like mansions, giant cities and towns. In that warrior's body, a snow-white thread like a spider's web appeared. The beginning of learning martial arts, the first glimpse of martial arts, the mud embryo realm. When you cross the threshold of this realm, your true qi will be scattered like a net, and you will close the net when you hold your breath. With your fists, you will gather your true qi and stop suddenly, and your qi will sink into the dantian, motionless like a mountain, and try to be like a clay bodhisattva by yourself. The subtlety of the knowledge in this realm, in scattering and shen, can rely on Wufu's true qi to feed back the muscles, bones and blood of the body, and can disperse the impurities deposited in the diet out of the body, and usually practice boxing and walking, sweating rain outside the body, qi and blood are in the body. When this state is complete, it is to find a mouthful of innate qi, pure true qi condenses into a line, flows like thunder, and the line is as long as a dragon, traversing mountains and rivers, crossing rivers and seas. The atmosphere of the martial artist in the arena began to change, with a pure infuriating breath, wandering like a fire dragon. The place of suffering is like choosing a place, laying a solid foundation and building a house just like a small alley. Speaking of this, Qin Pingan paused for a while. His face was a little gentle, but he quickly recovered and continued, in one go, that is, the martial artist uses his bones as pillars at the same time, and builds a high wall with flesh and blood, making the day after tomorrow filthy and filthy. Qi, even willing to disperse the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, all of them are expelled from the country. A martial artist is like the world without two masters, and I am the only one. What is pure martial arts? A martial artist is a real martial artist, and even if he competes with this world, he is a real martial artist, even if the house is still simple but the atmosphere is high and the spirit is very strong. In the second realm, the wood embryo realm, the body is gradually tough, and the qi and blood are vigorous. In this realm, the real qi feeds back and penetrates into the muscles, bones, and skin. Using the place where the qi sinks as the acupoint of the life, open up the territory and expand the soil bit by bit. To expand the path taken by the circulation of true energy, such as turning a bumpy and rugged rural muddy road into a flat and wide official road, the meridian expands and the more and more condensed true air circulates, the smoother the circulation. So this environment can not only it is the most intuitive way to test the quality of a martial artist's roots, and at the same time, it is the most test of a martial artist's patience and tenacity, which must be done with the most stupid water. Grinding kung fu. Speaking of this, Qin Pingan subconsciously pulled out his sleeves with both hands, clenched his fists and placed them lightly on his knees. His eyes were hot. There was a senior who taught boxing, and I specifically said this sentence: on the mountain of the gods and gods, the martial artist prefers to use his double fist. Fist opens the mountain, encounters injustice. I use both fists to level it. My generation of martial arts walks straight. The world is rugged, and I will open up a road of xuanhuan for myself and for the future. Therefore, the more hardships the martial arts endure in this realm, the more you are willing to die, the more you will achieve in the future. You cannot lose the invincible body of the Buddha's King Kong and the Taoism's glass-free body. When Qin Pingan said the word therefore, he had returned to his normal color, and his tone naturally calmed down. He just stretched out his hand and patted the leaf. One realm and two realms, the difference between plants and trees. Qin Pingan glanced at Chao and I. Zhong Qian also turned to look at the number one swordsman in the world today. He had a martial artist look that Zhong Qian was very familiar with. After all, he had come this way himself. Chao and I is fine, and he will be the second gold status? In an ancient battlefield, Chao and I, who possessed a martial arts courage, muttered to himself, fist can defeat the enemy, fist can kill, and fist can make a martial artist become the enemy of thousands of people in the battlefield, but a martial arts double fist can also save people's lives. Peace of the world. But it is quite strange that Chao and I straightened his clothes. As a pure martial artist, the question was far from the topic. Please ask Mr. Qin, what is the meaning of a king and a minister in his heart, and what is a scholar? Qin Pingan thought for a while and replied, what is the ruler? The sage says Ningxuan is also. The ruler uses propriety to rectify the country, and he runs the country like cooking a small fish. He has both Taoism and skills. The common people live and work in peace and contentment, and the emperor's family is in the world for the benefit of the people. If the emperor and monarch are unpopular, they can be demoted to the common people. Similarly, the common people can naturally be promoted to the monarch if they win the people's support. On the other hand, the gentleman, the Confucian, the practice of propriety, the law, the original is also. The gentleman is involved with the heaven and the earth, and moves like the emperor of heaven. He who controls the destiny judges all things and admires that it is in the sky. It is better to respect the one who is in himself. A fighter who forgets his identity, and whoever fights, must think that he is right and think that others are wrong. Lightly, he is a chivalrous person, and he repays his kindness and revenge for revenge, such as Jianghuan. There are those who sacrifice their lives for righteousness, those who are high-ranking people with blood splattered on the spot, those who are true heroes of the ancient style, and those who are light-hearted princes, but there are relatively few. The stars are falling, the spiritual currents are flowing, ghosts and gods are rising together, yin and yang are confused, dim and bright, and visions are full of visions. You, Chao and I, are a warrior, and seeing such strange and unimaginable things with your own eyes, what is your state of mind? Chao and I replied, a gentleman thinks it's normal, but a villain thinks it's weird. Qin Pingan smiled knowingly and stretched out a palm. I have offended a lot before, please ask Chao and I to take a seat. The swordsman Chao and I smiled and said, if you do your part, let me go. First he Qizhou and then Chao and I, the two warriors of the six realms, sat down, but Zhong Qian, who was recognized as the number one in the world, was still standing. Chao and I glanced at Zhong Qian intentionally or unintentionally. Zhongqian grinned. She was so angry I was in Luapa Mountain, let alone sitting, it was all lying down. There used to be a senior Wufu surnamed Zhu who gave me two analogies back then, saying that the meridians are like roads, and the flow of pure true air is the passage of vehicles and horses. Yes, you can also take shortcuts, pave less roads and get to the next level faster, but fighting against each other in the same realm is like a confrontation between the two countries' troops and horses. Naturally, whoever dispatches troops faster will win. A farmer, if you want a good harvest in a year, you have to work harder and endure more hardships, and cultivate a few more acres of fertile land, which is quite simple and easy to understand. Afterwards, Qin Pingan briefly explained the key point of the martial arts Mercury Mirror. What exactly is the mud bodhisattva crossing the river, and where are its dangers and benefits? About martial arts, let me repeat a few words about the boxing principles taught by predecessors. It is neither a shortcut nor a shortcut. Just talking about the martial arts of the three realms of qi refining, it was useless for Yu Zhini and Chongqiu to listen to them before, but now the time has come, you can try it. It is best to choose those battlefield sites where ghosts are full of ghosts and Yin soldiers are haunted. The filthy Yin wind and evil spirits coexist with the most Yang Gang wind. In the face of fierce ghosts like thousands of troops and horses, warriors are among them single-handedly. If you ask heaven and earth about boxing, you can naturally increase your boxing intentions and improve your boxing moves. Or you can ask boxing with those generals who sit in the battlefield ruins. Wufu is in a place where he will die, and he has no intention of retreating. This is the true meaning of the so-called to die to shape martial arts in the boxing manual. In the dark battlefield ruins, the martial arts and fists can be like the scorching sun hanging in the air. Burning the world, all evils will be warded off. The second is to fight on the battlefield, caught in a battle to the death, and finally realize that all the world is the enemy. The last is the discussion between the warriors. Of course, the degree of danger of the first two can be imagined. Wufu is full of fist intent. If there is protection from gods, when the 6 realms of martial arts have their own life, the weather will be different. Therefore, if a martial artist is in this realm, he can be called a small master. When he began to explain the 3 realms of soul, courage and martial arts, Qin Pingan raised his hand and waved his sleeves again. Next to the map of the warrior's body, there was a picture of a human world like celestial phenomena and stars out of thin air. The Qi Palace is as dense as stars hanging in the air. Gao Jun suddenly opened his eyes as if seeing a treasure. She held her breath and stared, trying to remember all the details of the image as quickly as possible. The expression of Xuanhuan, who had been listless, changed dramatically, and she finally couldn't help but exclaimed in surprise, "Impossible! People are arrogant, they are guessing that the total number is not 300 or 400. How can there be so many?" It wasn't until this moment that Xuanhuan really realized what a frog in a well is and what a world of difference is. She took a deep breath, followed the example of Gao Jun, and began to memorize it by rote. Zhou Shuzhen's expression was extremely complicated. She was probably the only Qi refiner who had more control over the location of the Qi Palace than Gao Jun, but had not yet successfully opened it up. So Zhou Shu really knows the true value of this picture scroll. Just this mysterious xianxia star map can be described as invaluable? Wufu is raised from 6 to 7. It is for the golden body. The golden body breaks through the realm. It is the distant travel realm that can control the wind like a Qi practitioner in the middle 5 realms, so it is called the feathering realm. The 3 realms of refining gods, especially the golden body realm, are rumored to be unique, or those who can find a new way by personal luck or family learning. They can use the 3 methods of driving, hiring, and praying, just like asking the upper body of a god to bless my body is like a soldier in a battlefield wearing armor, like a Qi refiner wearing a robe. It's just that I learned boxing and I don't follow this path. As for the mountain top of the 9 realms and the limit above it, in between, I only say there is one pass called the Qingtianmen. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "You have heard about it today and you can understand it. It is possible to learn martial arts and boxing, but feeding boxing is not feeding food, you have to make it up by yourself." At this moment, Tuoba Days, the lord of the grasslands, clasped his fists, his eyes were sincere and said in a lame Zhongyuan Yayan, "I beg Qin Jianxian to stop hiding his secrets, do his best and give us a unique skill anyway in my life. I don't dare to hope for a mountain top and I don't even dare to think about it, I just want to be able to see with my own eyes what the Grand Master of Zhijing is." "Since you said so, do you still think he'll let you see?" Qin Pingan asked back. "Do you think you are spending money to watch a play?" Cheng Yuanshan began to worry that Tuoba Days would fall asleep on the ground. Tuoba Days didn't change his expression, instead he laughed and said loudly, "Just now I said a few hypocritical words. Mr. Chin allows me to change my mouth. I will go to the top of the mountain in this life to take a look and learn what it is for myself. Crash to heaven. As for whether it is successful or not, you will only know the answer when you die." He didn't see Chin Pingan open his fist, and he just raised his feet and stomped his feet while wearing a green shirt. Centering on this big tree view in Chiochi Lake Zushan Mountain, 4 walls were erected high around the surrounding area in an instant. The water rises to the sky, moving the soul. The 4 high walls silently retreated into the lake. It was obvious that the sword immortal in blue robe was a great master with both hands shaking. Tuoba Days opened his mouth, was silent for a moment and said with a smile, "Mr. Chin, to be honest, my legs are weak. Can I sit and rest for a while?" Chin Pingan nodded with a smile. Being able to bend and stretch a man is a good man. Wufu refines qi, soul, and courage, so the research of qi cultivators in the 3 souls and 7 souls will only go deeper and farther. The 3 souls are fetal light, cool spirit, and secluded spirit. The realm of qi refiners is divided into a total of 15 realms. Chin Pingan shook his sleeves, and the picture of Mrs. Wu's body with mountains and rivers disappeared. When Chin Pingan said this, Huaifu suddenly opened his mouth to speak. Mr. Chin had a saying before, being connected to the gods, participating in the heaven and earth, and he said that he can't see his work but see his merits, which is called a god. There was an uproar, although the members of the discussion were not loud, but they were not small when they got together. They all felt that Yu Shanjun were at a critical juncture. After all, qi refiners may not be too interested in the realm of martial arts, but pure warriors must not take anything lightly about the realm of qi refiners. Shanjun Huaifu, who looked like a child, turned a deaf ear, just stared at the sword fairy in blue and continued to say to himself, "I don't want to go back to the source of how I became a landscape god, but I have doubts in my heart. I have always been puzzled, so I humbly ask the gentleman here. If you say that the human body is rare, then you will die as a ghost. The reason why some of them are civil, military, and heroic are different from the solitary and wild ghosts who have lost their consciousness and gradually disappear between heaven and earth. Is a little bit of the true spirit of human nature lingering? Or do good deeds in a previous life get good results and good retribution? If this is true, why do people turn into ghosts after death, and why do I watch the karma of some ghosts in their lives? Is obviously a person with many evil deeds in the previous life, but can exist in the human world for a long time, even stealing the mountains and rivers, building temples and erecting statues, and enjoying the incense of the people in a grand manner? Do we still need to go further to seek the context, trace the 3 generations, or even more lots of karma and cycles of cause and effect? Chin Pingan hesitated for a moment and said, "I only know the appearance of heroic spirits, and they can walk in the yang and the underworld for a long time without hindrance. It is true that a little true spirit is immortal. I don't know the rest." Huaifu nodded. "I will find the answer myself in the future." Chin Pingan didn't need to speak, he just sat on the chair by himself. Sun Wanyin followed and asked, "I also have a question that I would like to ask for advice. I once saw a sentence in a book, but sincerity in the world can do its best. Is this sentence reasonable or unreasonable?" Chin Pingan nodded and smiled. "Of course it makes sense." Sun Wanyin smiled and said, "That's even weirder. Some of the guys here are also sincere people or good people?" Chin Pingan said indifferently, "Whether you can cultivate Taoism, become a prostitute, or become a fairy in a mountain, has nothing to do with good or evil. It is only pure and chance." Sun Wanyin hesitated. Chin Pingan smiled and said, "That's why some other people are also standing here. Don't give up positions and paths for some people. Dao Sun, what do you think?" Sun Wanyin's eyes lit up, she turned sideways with all manner of graceful blessings and sat down with a smile. The old man who called himself a pottery said hoarsely, "Ask for advice on one thing, what does it mean to cultivate the Tao?" Chin Pingan replied, "Things exist but only in time. Therefore sincerity of the heart can form has spirit, and spirit can transform. Reasonable righteousness will become clearer in case of events, and changes will bring prosperity. This is called the virtue of heaven. In order to cultivate the Tao, it is called the perfect person, and it is in order to obtain the Tao." Master is preaching. The old man chewed for a moment and was amazed. He smiled and clasped his fists and said, "Old arms and legs, please give me a seat." Chin Pingan stretched out his hand and smiled, "Old gentleman, just do whatever you want. Zhong Qian understands it clearly. Derqing is a little thicker skinned, so she can sit back? Just say that this old guy is a ghost, he is talking about his old arms and legs." So Zhong Qian coughed and pinched for a long time before asking tentatively, Master Qin Shan? Qin Pingan smiled and said, my family who knows the route, can either sit or stand for the finale. It just depends on Master Zhong's current mood. Zhong Qian couldn't be polite, so she quickly sat down, leaned against the back of the chair, stretched her legs, held the handle of the chair with both hands and let out a sigh of relief. Anyway, I've done my best. I followed Shanjun Huaifu, Sun Wanyan and that old guy to help you buy as much time as possible to remember the second immortal picture. Qin Pingan continued, the lower 5 realms, the copper skin realm, the grassroot realm, the willow tendon realm, the bone energy realm and the building complex realm. They are the same as the 3 realms of martial arts, and you should experience them yourself. The 3rd realm is also known as the retention realm. The 5 realms, the cave house realm, the sea view realm, the dragon gate realm, the Jindan realm and the nascent soul realm. To form a Jindan guest, Fong is my generation. Gao Jun is now the Jindan realm, together with the nascent soul realm. It is called Earth Immortal. It can travel far away from the Yin spirit to the mountains and rivers, and it can temper the body of the Yang spirit. The upper 5 realms, Yupu Immortals, soaring. The 14th realm, the unity of heaven and man, is temporarily named Hedao. The 15th realm has no name. Compared with the first picture of mountains and rivers, this Qin Zhenxian seems to have made the second astrological picture too succinct. In fact, Gao Jun, who had memorized all the details, bit the bullet and said in his heart, why is Lord Qin Xiangxi so favoring one over the other? It's just that a gentleman can bully him so he doesn't care too much about you. You, the head of the Hushan faction, don't take an inch. Qin Pingan reminded in his heart, learn more from me and accept it as soon as it is good. The immortal image dissipated. After thinking about it, Gao Jun was speechless. Qin Pingan stretched out his hand to pick up the leaf, threw it out gently, and disappeared in everyone's sight. Lotus Root Blessed Land is already a high-grade blessed land that cannot be promoted, and at most there will be another small cave connected to it in the future. In this way, as long as Luopao Mountain does not block, the Gao Jun, who is now a golden core, must be in the nascent soul realm, and even hope to enter the upper 5 realms. Sun Wanyan's aptitude is very good, she can even be transferred to Fu Lu, which has a very high threshold, and her future achievements will definitely not be low. Just give her 2 Dao books, one only needs to be the Howren entry rank Fu Lu Dao book, plus a suitable one the Secret of Ghost Refining Qi. Sun Wanyan will definitely become the kind of golden elixir that is invincible, except for swordsmen, in the next 100 years. Eugenie taught several secret teaching methods to Qing Shan, who took the initiative to take refuge in him back then. He didn't keep a lot of secrets, and he could be regarded as half a direct disciple after Gao Jun. Therefore, Qing Shan, who has been reborn, does have the qualification of Jindan, but the qualification is one thing, whether it is successful or not is another matter. It is inevitable to go up the mountain to cultivate the Tao and stumble several times. I admire Lu Zhou Shuzhen, his achievements in martial arts in those years, and his aptitude for cultivating Taoism today are on par with the armed Saint Qing Shan. But there is one thing that Zhou Shu really has an advantage over Qing Shan, and that is to take advantage of the first-to-moment advantage of the building near the water. Eugenie relies on the fairy family magic method that he has figured out by himself, but the respect for the building is a veritable family with deep roots. There are more than 50 ready-made secret recipes that can be used by Qi refiners. It is only said that Zhou Shuzhen and the contemporary landlord have practiced more than 10 kinds of xianxia techniques. Back then, when Lu Tai visited the building several times, it was actually just to block the door and block the road, and resolutely did not let Eugenie go in and read a book. Can Eugenie be more leisurely than him? This demon sect leader of Lu Tai is so full that he has nothing to do all day long. Just to say the last time, Lu Tai even brought those several direct disciples with him. It was obvious that he was just waiting for the rabbit and taking advantage of the situation to get rid of Eugenie. Lu Tai even arranged the landscape formation. Unfortunately, Eugenie quietly retreated. As for the Zuoshua Jiao who practiced the fire technique, as long as Wei Liang managed it properly, she could even become a nascent soul. This is a unique opportunity. Her real name is Hu Jiao, her avenue is lofty, and she is the first genus of monsters to walk across the river. Only then did an enlightened mountain snake who thought to cook rivers and rivers with fire, succeeded in waiting without any risk. If Wei Liang didn't care at this time, could it be that when her realm surpassed Wei Liang, she was still rebellious and reckless, and then Luo Pashan would take care of her? Among the pure warriors, Chao and I will soon become golden. As for Zhong Qian, who is still #1 in the world for the time being, as long as she doesn't spend the whole year on the Luopa mountain, she only cares about eating and drinking and rubbing fists with the old cook. She will go one step further and become a martial artist in the far-flung realm. It is suspenseful, not much. The only problem is that after Zhong Qian entered the distant travel realm, once she was caught up and overtaken by other pure warriors such as Chao and I, it would be difficult for Zhong Qian to rise to the next level and climb to the top of the mountain. In this world, it is true that martial arts are abundant, but the circulation of martial arts does not pay attention to fairness. Let's just say that Jiang Shenxi or the ghost Xuanhuan is not inferior to Zhong Qian in martial arts talent. The guest of jianghu beside Li Yeho, the martial arts master, can actually be used by Xuanhuan as an authentic work to copy. Of course, there is also xuanhuan. It is estimated that his achievements in martial arts will not be low in the future. As for Wu Jiang, compared to Jiang Shenxi and Xuanhuan, whether it is the martial arts physique, talent, and the level of condensed martial arts that have been beaten so far, they are still significantly worse. As far as learning boxing is concerned, physical tenacity and strong boxing spirit are the foundation of a $1,000 existence. There are a total of 6 realms of body refining and qi refining, and each step needs to be walked steadily and firmly. Tao Xiang, who used to be Wu Jiang's master, was very ordinary in martial arts, and his disciples were even more sloppy. It was me, Qin Pingan, who came to teach boxing and gave myself 10 years of kung fu. At this moment, Wu Jiang, shouldn't it have started in the far-flung realm? Qin Pingan said, since the chat is over, it's time to set the rules. If there is any objection, you can discuss it. The mountain old woman with axe on the mountain was flattering, bowing her head and bending over with a smile. Qin Jianxian, can I also sit down and listen to the teachings? Qin Pingan was silent, but the chair beside the old woman shattered and turned into powder on the spot. The old woman was so frightened that she sued again and again. Tang Jie, the emperor of the northern Jin dynasty, trembled slightly, and Tuoba Days was also vigilant. Qin Pingan wrapped his arms around his sleeves and said slowly, family and country Xinjia Daochang Jianghu martial arts, there are rules and regulations, which is the right thing. The mansion of the immortal family of Qi refiners, the ancestral temple of the gods of mountains and rivers, the dojo on the top of the mountain and the mountain, the temple and the rivers and lakes, as well as the secluded and bright roads, whether the court seals the righteousness or prohibits prostitution temples, anyway you need to abide by the rules. Dongyue Zhao Yuran, where his governance is located, is in charge of the ghosts and the underworld in the world, so Zhao Shanjun is required to take charge of all the temples of the city god in the world. Shanjun Zhao Yuran was stunned for a while, still sitting and clasping his fists to return the salute, and said solemnly, Dongyue leads the order. Zhongyue Zheng Fengzhou, who is in charge of the world and the circulation of the world. The first Confucian temple was built in Xia. Qin Pingan continued, as for a group of sages, the main hall and the 2 side halls in the east and west will each accompany a few people. The ritual specifications for these specific sacrifices are drawn up by you, Zheng Shanjun, the monarchs of the 4 kingdoms and the rest of the mountains. 2 paintings I will hand it over to Zheng Shanjun to bring it back to the hospital. Zheng Fengzhou, who had been standing, was obviously very surprised, and still clasped his fists and said loudly, follow the law. After saying this, Zheng Fengzhou took his seat generously. Nanyue Huaifu, who is in charge of the world's martial arts and the construction of the first martial arts temple, is also discussing which famous generals to choose as accomplices. The master of the martial arts temple worships the Taoist priest Bixiao Cave Master. The deputy priest. Qin Pingan paused for a moment and said in a deep voice, Wufu Chui Cheng. Huaifu clasped his fists and said, Nanyue takes orders. Xia Mountain is in the arms of Song Dynasty, and he is in charge of inspecting the spiritual flow of heaven and earth. He is responsible for recording the Qi refiners in the world, regardless of their origins. He also manages the world's birds and animals, smelting and casting, marriage between men and women, as well as the imperial guards and Qi fighters of various countries. Song Huaibao sighed when he heard the words. He was more surprised than Zhongyue Jing Shanjun. He originally thought that this trip to the autumn lake, let alone the empty bamboo basket, he would go away without food. Such a solid divine authority? Song Huaibao lowered his head and clasped his fists, no more cynical expression, and said solemnly, Xia obeys the order. When Song Huaihui was seated, then among the 5 mountain lords, there was only the Beiwe mountain lord, the self-proclaimed Jade Master. Qin Pingan smiled and said, Beijue priesthood, I haven't thought about it yet. Inside the Demugwan, many people looked at each other or smiled at each other, and some couldn't help but laugh out loud. The Master Yu had a normal expression, and he put on the whisk in his hands and said righteously, "Mr. Chin is so hard to explain to us this time." Don't worry at all, Mr. Chin might as well rest for a while." Looking up a little, seeing the blue shirt sword immortal thinking for a while, he seemed to have given up his thoughts again, withdrew the words that were originally on his lips, and then he was so dazed and absent-minded. The old man, who was originally very knowledgeable about polite words and scenes, had no choice but to continue talking. Thanks to his proficient knowledge of this subject, he was able to keep on going on like this. Qin Pingan seemed to deliberately put the Shanjun aside, but he was actually distracted. I remember that Li Shixing once waved his sleeves outside the sky and painted a map of the astronomical stars. It turned out that Zhou used Jianghu, Fuyazu and Tonggishao to create a secret formation with faint traces to reinforce the Qingdao track outside the sky, together with the 14 realm monsters. Together they lead a wild world to crash into the vast world, wanting to think that the two ships will collide. Qin Pingan used the stacking formation, and Bai Jing used the magic weapon technique. They were not idle. They received 3 great tides of aura, each with their own benefits. Every time they opened the door, it was roughly equivalent to accepting the aura savings of an ascension cultivator. Every golden elixir and earth immortal in the world will hold a peak opening ceremony. The root of it is to occupy a dojo so that it can justifiably absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. After joining forces to successfully block the ferry, Qin Pingan took Xiaoma and Bai Jing back to the Taishu battlefield, but the wild old woman and the big demon officer Yi, who were still thinking of going together, took the lead and the latter returned to the tide first. Yu Yun and Qingdao really meant it, but Qin Pingan and the others didn't make a trip in vain. Bai Jing directly handed out a sword, which smashed one of Guan Yi's arms on the spot. She would like to have a feud with an unreasonable sword cultivator like Bai Jing, so she took the initiative to show her goodwill, and when it was to save money and eliminate disasters, she threw an ancient branch with several green buds to Bai Jing. Without entanglement, when Guan Yi and the old woman left, only the leftovers were left in the cold. Bai Jing naturally looked down on him, so he walked with the monk on the road and saw a copper coin on the ground, so naturally he was too lazy to bend over to pick up the money. It's just that the mountain master has spoken, and she has just obtained an ancient branch that is not worth a lot of money from Guan Yi's side, so she is willing to raise her hand and collect the spiritual energy equivalent of a jade pure realm chi practitioner. Condensed into a spirit bead the size of a green apricot, because the bead contains a little rhyme of the trajectory of the green road, the so-called mosquito legs of Qin Shanju are also meat, just like Bai Jing, who deliberately did not reveal the true origin of the branch. Offended. Probably this is not a family not entering a door? Xiego was used to staying in Luopao Mountain, not without reason. After that, the two sides agreed to share the spoils in the sky. Bai Jing gave 3 fist-sized green beads, which was equivalent to the spiritual wealth of 2 Ascension Realm Chi practitioners. Originally, Bai Jing, who was thinking about how to get away with the lack of pounds and short too, just because there was Xiao Mo beside her, it was rare for her to get angry. Before wandering around Beiju Luzhou, the sable-cap girl was infected with a lot of aura. In the market, gold and silver craftsmen want to make money, except for their signature craftsmanship, they can't rely on their conscience. All the proceeds of the trip to the sky, Qin Pingan has arranged. The 3 tides of spiritual energy that I have absorbed, Luopao Mountain and Qingping Sword Sect, Mixifeng Chanchun Qisong Mountain in Dongtian. As for the green apricot jewel from the finishing, originally, there were 2 kinds of plans, either smashing it and integrating the spiritual energy into the world of Lotus Root Blessed Land, or giving it to someone or a certain dojo alone. As a result, it could be Gao Jun's Hushan faction, or it could be a certain Deyue Mountain Jun mansion in the Blessed Land, or Wei Liang, the supreme emperor of Nanyuan Kingdom. Such a seemingly inconspicuous bead of spiritual energy is more than a windfall for these blessed land forces, it is simply a huge sum of money. Unfortunately, Wei Liang was the first to be excluded. Originally, the 3,000 elite cavalry of Nanyuan State escorted Tonggishao refugees into the Blessed Land to take refuge and escape from disaster. There was no credit or hard work. Therefore, in Qin Pingan's inner order, Wei Liang and Nanyuan State were actually very high. And the 2 green beads that Bai Jing gave at the end were not light. It was rare for Qin Pingan to remember his identity as a mountain master. He planned to use it when he retreated and broke through the border, and carried it with him for emergencies. Just when Master Jade Master felt that he had nothing to say, the young master, who was savvy about heaven and man, seemed to have finally regained his senses. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Then you are in charge of this world, all the gods of the mountains and rivers who have obtained the orthodoxy of the imperial court." responsible for compiling a golden and jade genealogy of landscape and officialdom. Just don't know if it's hard work? Master Jade gave a bow and said repeatedly, "It's not hard, it's not hard." Qin Pingan said, "Officials have always been the most difficult to manage, Xuanhuan has to be careful." Master Jade did not straighten his waist and raised his head and said, "Little god must be cautious, and must live up to Qin Jiangxian's high hopes." Qin Pingan reluctantly said in his heart, "The writing is as ethereal as a god's help, and every game is innocent. Since things are coming to an end, why should Wu Xuanhuan continue to hide his clumsiness?" Lu Tai was a guest at the top of Beiwa Mountain, and Wu Shan, the first in the world, was here. "God, it can be said that we meet, drink and burn cypress and recite Taoism together. Why, Lu Tai is on your side and speaks ill of me? If Song Jian, the water of Songlai Kingdom, is the first mountain god, then Zhang Shanjun of Beiwa is the first mountain who deserves it." The old man who looked like a Taoist smiled slightly, straightened his waist and held a whisk in his hand. His aura changed completely and he looked like two different people. Lao Shanjun smiled and said, "Young Taoist Lu is on my side. When it comes to Qin Jianxian, that's really nice to say. It's over. When I saw it today, I realized that what Dao Yu Lu said was true. It turns out that there are really good people like Qin Jianxian in the world." Outside the Taoist temple, Jiang Shenxi, who fell into the water, was salvaged by Yuan Huang and Wu Jiang. There was no need to save him. Jianghuan was a ghost. The former Luodi scholar, now the ghost, after Jianghuan woke up, lost his soul and felt sad, sitting at the foot of the Taoist temple, neither going to the Dhamma temple to seek revenge for that person, but also unwilling to leave. At this moment, a woman stepped out of the water and the autumn waves flowed. She blinked and jumped ashore. "Jianghuan, do you remember me?" Jianghuan raised his head with a blank look on his face. "Is she Guling? Are you dreaming?" The woman pretended to be sad. "It's only been a few years, so forget about me. You scholars are really ruthless." As she spoke, the woman smiled and shed tears. Jianghuan stood up, held her in his arms and said softly, "We used to be humans, but now we are all ghosts. Guling, we are really a good match." The woman nodded lightly. Who said no? Qin Pingan stood up, looked up at the sky, cupped his hands and clasped his fists and said with a smile, "Thank you Lao Guanzhu for pushing the boat along the way." The old master of the Qingshan dynasty, who is far away in the Qingming world, smiled and asked, "I have been so difficult for me, does this count as repaying grievances with virtue?" Qin Pingan smiled and said nothing. Lao Guanzhu said, "Yes, it's still the fool of the year, you really did what you said." Qin Pingan said, "Senior did not see the wrong person." Lao Guanzhu was speechless for a while and finally just laughed and scolded, and then removed the magical power. Xiaomo held back his laughter, and beside a female sword cultivator named Fu Xuanjia, she sincerely praised, "Bixiao Cave Master Mr. Xiaomo, this Qin Pingan is too. Sai, forget it, I can't say good things." The old master said indifferently, "Xiaomo, remind him when he goes back, as long as he has not entered the 14th realm, don't come here. When he has this realm, certain words will have some weight." There was once a young man with mud legs who strayed into the depths of lotus flowers with his sword on his back. At that time he insisted that it was probably just that he felt that everything in the world is like hair, and that I have a small matter that is as big as a fight. Sword of Coming Chapter 1203. Qin Ping left Yuxian alone, left the mountain alone, went to the bamboo building to change into his daily mountain attire, and put on the padded robe and cloth shoes again. Green and green. Xiego sat at the table by the cliff, said that he had fulfilled his mission, and brought the words to Lu Sabao. Qin Pingan smiled and nodded, and asked her to talk to Guizhuzhou about having dinner together. In the past, as long as Guizhuzhou stayed in the mountains to eat, Qin Pingan would cook in person and stir-fry some special side dishes, not to mention comparing with Julien's cooking skills, but he was very good at eating and he didn't care about it. Yuxian was quite helpless. Just now Qin Daoyu's self-evaluation of not enough qualifications, come up with ideas, made the old man speechless again. Why are fellow Taoists swearing again? You have to take care of the old scholar. There are 5 Taofu sects in one mountain, and Haoran is the only one. Yuxian remembered that he had a few fairy seedlings in his family. Their aptitudes were quite good, and their mountaineering practice was as powerful as a bamboo, but each of them had too high aspirations. The ancestral genealogy is in the line of sword immortals and Jingwei Guan Taoism. Seeing the virtues of this patriarch who has his nostrils up to the sky, he still has to complain face to face that the founder of the mountain is not a sword fairy. Don't you all think that you are extremely smart, and breaking through the realm is like eating and drinking, so I let you meet Qin Pingan, who was born after the golden core was broken, and who returned to the Jade after retreating 3 times. I don't know if Qin Daoyu has this kind of leisure. Would you like to train him? Estimated hanging. Is it possible to spend 500 gold and fine copper coins to buy the word Taoist temple, or Guandao, at a sky-high price, and then talk to Qin Daoyu about additional head? The chaotic mountains are high and low from the state. Don't be surprised that this town has the oldest style. This place was originally the ridge of the world. The short-stature old man, wearing a purple Taoist robe, pinched his fingers, and looked intently at the east gate of the town. Yu Xian could vaguely see a Taoist priest riding a bull to enter the pass, and the purple energy came from the east. Not daring to look at the old-time scene, Yu Xian stood on the railing, gasped, and suddenly widened his eyes, only to see a purple aura between the sky and the earth, divided into 2 lines, mighty like a raging river, suddenly crashing into his 2 sleeves like a fish in water. Yu Xian couldn't stop him, shook his sleeves. Good guy, it's supposed to be nothing more than ethereal and weightless Dao Qi, but it's actually heavy. Let already 14 the old real people in the world have to bend down a little. If you are in the Tianwai Xinghe dojo and you are poor, you don't have to bend this way. Yu Xian put away his thoughts, shook his sleeves, bowed his head to the sky, and thanked Daozu. Lu Shilu and Bai Yes house are next to each other, so it's convenient to visit. Zheng Yuqian finally saw the most proud little monster in the world, who was born in Tongyi's Hao, and dared to chat with him. It seems that I have wronged my husband. It turns out that my husband didn't brag and didn't write drafts. He really knew Bai. Zheng Yuqian wasn't afraid of Bai Yi. After all, Bai also wanted to kill and only kill the great demon of the wild throne. The little uncle who is a hidden official is different. When you meet a monster clan, you will call 1 to kill 1, 2 to kill 1 pair, and 3 to kill all of them. They don't even blink. Of course, in addition to being the last hermit official who killed monsters like hemp in the Great Wall of Sword Chi, he is also a junior uncle of his own family. We met for the first time on the mountain road last year. The junior uncle is on my side and has a very good temper. Chatting with myself, the little uncle didn't speak loudly. Because the eldest brother Baideng was appointed by the Dali court to fill in the righteousness of Taya Fujiang, and he only had to complete the road to becoming A and the ceremony for the time being. The sword immortal of the Yupu realm, not too afraid of the torment of the broken bones, and under the eyes of Luoluo Mountain, there must be no accidents, so he changed his name to Zheng Qiu's Ghostin Lu. As the second brother, I made a private discussion with Luxiaza Kinggong Shengaoging, who was the third younger brother. Apart from helping the elder brother to protect the pass, the 2 of them would also participate in the court sealing ceremony. At least they wanted to support their elder brother. There is a Confucian temple on the side to give the title, and it is a grand celebration. They all want to see the world-famous night banquet, but they are not familiar with Wei Shanjun. It's just that Inlu dare not pretend that he has a good relationship with Chen Yingguan. If he is not careful, he will be hit by a brick, so Gao Geng, a guest from the Downcast Mountain, has to go and talk to the young Yingguan. The youngest, the third younger brother, but he has the responsibility. He can go to the mountains of swords and seas of fire. Just say it, it's just 3 invitations from Qin Shanju and Wei Shanjun. Banquet, you know the rules. So Gao Geng pretended to be relaxed when he learned that Qin Shanju was walking to the top of the mountain with an old man in purple clothes. Like dying. Gao Geng didn't dare to interrupt Qin Shan's chat with his friends on the mountain, so he lingered at the junction of the mountain road and the Shinto, waiting patiently at the same spot for Qin Pingan to come down the mountain alone, and then quickly stepped forward, biting the bullet and saying the invitation. Qin Pingan was not embarrassed when he heard the words, and said with a smile on the spot, "Such a trivial matter. Master Gao only needs to chat with Chen Lingjun while drinking and then let him inform himself. Don't mobilize the crowd like this, it's too far-fetched." Gao Geng was overjoyed. He never thought that he would have such a big face on Qin Shan's side. Qin Shanju even personally sent Gao Geng to the gate of the mansion, and chatted all the way, speaking freely. The good news went. One must know that Master Jinghao stayed in the mountains for so long. This young hermit official with great achievements did not even give him the face of having a drink together. It was the first time for Ningji to come to Luapa Mountain, and everything was new, but he didn't dare to go out alone. The husband was busy, so Ningji followed senior brother Zhao Mo like a little follower. The girl in the pink dress named Nuanshu said that since she is a student of the Master of the Mountain, she usually has a house on the mountain, and there are several vacant places for Ningji to choose from. How can a young man who is too poor dare to occupy a house all to himself? To be honest, Ningji, who is used to wandering, is also not used to those days of happiness and wealth, so he just said that he can live in a house with senior brother Zhao. Zhao Shuxia has always been hardworking when it comes to learning boxing, and he is walking around in the courtyard at this moment. Ning Ji sat on the other side of the steps and watched. The young man was quiet and peaceful, and he didn't feel that watching boxing was boring. Sun Yuanji was practicing boxing on the mountain path. The Taoist priest at the gate was originally a serious person. Every time Sun Yuanji took a rest at the gate of the mountain, the Taoist would just say that the weather is good today, the polite words. Now as soon as Jing Dafeng raised his head, the Taoist priest raised his head, Jing Dafeng stared at her, and the Taoist priest followed with both heads shifted by the same amount. Hey, it's not that the whole family doesn't enter the house, it's said that the gatekeepers are all chosen by the mountain master himself. Qin Lingjun, who was clamoring to go down the mountain out of nowhere, was scolded, and Nuan Shu came to him with a small grain of rice, and asked him if there was a wrong tendon, and he lived well on the mountain, so he insisted on moving to Qilong Lane. Who was watching? Qin Lingjun was aggrieved. He just looked at the girl in the pink skirt who had finished scolding him and was going to go back and forth. After thinking about it, Qin Lingjun didn't say anything. Just sitting on the steps, holding his head, sighing, Xiao Mili sat aside, pulled Jing Qing's sleeves, and then handed over a handful of melon seeds. Qin Lingjun was eating the melon seeds, kowtowed, knocking out his courage, chatting with the millet grains. Xiao Mili said, "Don't be afraid." The good mountain owner said, "The old you heard about Jing Qing's deeds in Beiju Luzhou from his husband, and he wanted to get to know you while he was busy with business." Qin Lingjun grinned when he heard that and laughed loudly. He quietly stood in the warm tree outside the wall. Seeing that Xiao Mili spoke verbatim, the girl in the pink skirt felt relieved and left lightly. While Xiao Mili revealed the secret to Jing Qing, she secretly extended her thumb towards the wall. Qin Lingjun nodded, indicating that she knew. They looked at each other and grinned. Chao Qinglang was engraving a seal in the study room. He traveled with Mr. Zhong to the Great Wall of Sword Qi. The carving knife was given by his husband. Chao Qinglang was engraving a gourd-shaped book collection seal with the words, "Like a new book." He wanted it as a birthday present this year. Send it to Mr. There is a study plaque hanging in the house, which was first written by Mr. Zhu on the paper, and then Mr. Zhu copied and expanded the words on the wood. "Wish to hear that I have passed the fast." Pei Qian followed Li Baoping to the reading post, and Li Huai lived there, but there would be no more literary fights, like when they were young. Wu Fu, the young man in Confucian shirt, the sage of the academy, no longer have the mood to quarrel. Hearing that Li Baoping was coming, Lin Shuyi and Dong Shuijing took Shi Jiachuan, who was temporarily living in Taoya Lane, to take a talisman boat to the Care reading post, a rare reunion of classmates. Cui Dongshan acted arbitrarily, causing Lu Xianying to sleepwalk and ask swords. He didn't dare to see his husband at all. He called the chief of Zhou and slipped away. He went straight to the blessed land of lotus root together. Some things had to be finished. The girl in the mink hat was lying in the sea of clouds, her legs crossed, waiting for Xiaoma to come home. "Gentle Xiaoma, maybe I will come back today, maybe I will come back tomorrow." The day after tomorrow will be the wedding night in the bridal chamber. Sitting next to him was an extremely sad white-haired boy, who looked like he had nothing to love, because he knew that he had been expelled by the leader of the Guo League. What kind of evil did he do, poor man, with boundless suffering? Sensing the vision of purple air on the other side of the mountain, Xiego sat up, clenched his fists with both hands, propped them on his knees, and his momentum changed completely. Ashamed to carry a short sword just to see the mountains. Xiego pursed his lips. President Guo was right, you can't slacken your cultivation just because of your aptitude too good. Even juniors like Yu Xian who are thousands of years older than her are in the 14th realm. At the kitchen in the small courtyard, Qin Pingan was busy wearing an apron, Lu Xianying was sitting on the threshold, Gukan was squatting on the bench in the house, carrying a torch, his cheeks were bulging and blowing the wind to light a fire. Qin Pingan asked casually, "Is it a double talisman?" Lu Xianying laughed and said, "That guy did use a substitute to save his life. He was as slippery as a rice field eel. The substitute was wiped out by the uncle without any effort. The realm of the real body is not much higher." Qin Pingan said, "It's best not to use this method of suppressing the bottom of the box before entering the ascension realm." Lu Xianying sneered and said, "Teach me how to do things? If you talk nonsense I will let Gukan go." Gukan didn't bother to pay attention, just raised her neck, glanced at the condiment plates on the other side of the chopping board and reminded, "Fry me a green pepper ham, make it more spicy." Qin Pingan nodded and said, "Lu Qiqing has arrived in Zhouqing and is currently staying in Dong Shuijing's inn. I guess he will come to Luoba Mountain to drink, either tomorrow or the day after tomorrow." Gukan said, "I'm annoying him, I don't want to see him." Qin Pingan took some more peppers, cut the ham with a knife skillfully and said, "After all, you are from the uncle generation. It is your good fortune to meet an elder like Han Xiaosa. At least you will not be in the way if you have Lu Qiqing. Yes, it's still luck. You don't need to be too enthusiastic, you have to live with face." Gukin was silent for a moment, then said, "People like Lu Qiqing, if you deliberately don't deal with him, he will be a little bit smarter, otherwise he would be able to use his brain without using his brain." Qin Ping smiled and nodded, "That's right." Gukin said, "I'm very free, do you want me to take a trip to Tonggishao?" Comparing patience with others, Gukin has never lost to anyone in her life. Qin Pingan said, "Idle? How idle is it? Now it is the bottleneck of the Jade Raw realm, touching the threshold of the immortal realm? Planning to build a sect is child's play." Gukin was silent. Lu Xianying yelled and laughed loudly, "You are in the nascent soul realm and you are ashamed to teach Gu Zongzhu a lesson. When you eat later you are squatting and holding the bowl, so you are not qualified to serve." It's not easy for Gukin to say anything to Qin Pingan. He is very familiar with angering Lu Xianying. Lu Xianying had already expected that before Gukin could swear, he had already voluntarily surrendered. Qin Pingan squatted, "He'll sit on the floor to eat." Yu Lu and Xie also took the Fengyuan ferry back to Nujiadu this time, but they didn't go to Luapa Mountain, but went directly to Erlang Lane. "The house has been vacant for many years. I never wanted to thank you and kept the key." When I opened the door, Yu Lu moved a stool by the patio, sitting and looking up at the sky. "Thank you for being a maid here. I revisited the old place. Things changed and people changed. I fetched water and began to wipe the tables and stools. I found an old broom. I moved gently everywhere. When I passed by Lu, the dust was flying. Lu had no choice but to wave his hands to disperse the dust." Old Immortal Jia went back to Qilong Lane and saw Lin Feijing, a Taoist priest who is the current treasurer. Jian Shop bought braised pork pickles and a roast goose, and then greeted shopkeeper Sher at the entrance of the New Year's shop, and entered Chao Tu's shop, shouting that the wine bugs rebelled, and asked the two apprentices Tian Jiuer and Zhao Dengao. He hurriedly brought the wine and put the food on the table. The old Taoist chatted with Lin Feijing and signed up for his own number. Immortal Master, take the matter seriously and return the gift. Afterwards, he was dragged to the table by the old god, saying that it was just a few drinks, that people should not be drunk by wine, not too much, and that the old would stop at the toast, let alone persuade them to drink. "I just drink a few big bowls with pride. The old man is drunk with wine, his face is flushed and his temples are frosty, so it doesn't matter. When we meet in the rivers and lakes we have wine and meat and we are friends." After a meal of wine, Lin Feijing drank very comfortably, and felt that he had met an old man with a warm heart. Julian wasn't there, but his dining table was lively. Qin Pingan didn't deliberately call out, and those who were on other hilltops temporarily took care of the meal by themselves. At this moment the table was still full of people. The little boy in Tsingy started to raise his tail. He wandered into the yard with his hands behind his back, but he didn't see the figure of the old man in purple. At the dinner table, Qin Pingan gave Chao Qinglang a chance to bring those two friends to Luapa Mountain as guests, and Chao Qinglang agreed with a smile. Chao Qinglang hesitated for a while, but still did not complain to the husband. It turned out that besides the little senior brother, there were actually two young sword repairmen from the Great Wall of Sword Qi who served as the bait at Dadu and Tonggishao, but they all volunteered. Fishing, with Sovereign Shui. On the way here on the Fengyuan ferry, the little brother repeatedly told me not to leak this matter to my husband for fear of multiple crimes and punishment. The position of sovereign will be changed, and I vowed to guarantee Chao Junior brother, rest assured, the next suzerain will be yours sooner or later. Don't be in a hurry, let the little senior brother warm up the top spot first. Chao Qinglang chose to help keep the secrecy, not for the sake of fellowship. On the contrary, I feel that a sword repairer is a sword repairer and has his own style of action, and he should respect the choices of Yu Xiehui and He Gu. Qin Pingan reminded Chao Qinglang from his heart that after returning to Tonggishao, the recent situation is more complicated, involving the overall ups and downs of their ups and downs, and anything can happen in the middle, so don't go to see Su Jin alone, and if you want to see them, you have to bring Cui Dongshan with you. Chao Qinglang didn't ask any further questions and still had no objection. Qin Pingan wanted to explain a little bit. Chao Qinglang smiled and told the husband not to think too much, just deal with the affairs at hand. The students knew it well. Accompanied by mountains and rivers full of wine and food. Because Qin Shanzhu, who is more airy than the sky, rarely takes the initiative to ask for invitations, this is the first rare event, so Weibo personally went to Luapa Mountain and brought 3 invitations for night tour banquets, bypassing the ceremony of the Tiger's Mansion. As the secretary, Wei Bo wrote down the names and Taoist names of Bai Deng and others in his own handwriting. Sword cultivator Bai Deng and the ghost Inlu, one has lived in a closed mountain for too long, and the other is a wild monster. They don't quite know the importance of etiquette here, but they are well aware of the constant high farming in the Luxiaza wine bureau, so they went down in person. The cook cooked a few dishes of appetizers and forced Wei Shanjun, who can be regarded as a great monk in the Ascension realm, to stay and stop for a drink. In any case, the eldest brother will soon be the orthodox water of Taifujiang. The ancestral temple is so close to Piyun Mountain, just like Fugua County. It's a good thing to have a good relationship. Some people in the court change officials, and the county officials are not as good as they are now. Wei Bo didn't expect Gao Gung to make such a fuss, and he stretched out his hand not to hit the smiling face. After all, he was a direct disciple of Ascension Realm and a guest who could stay in Luopi Mountain. At the table, Jianxiu Bai Deng didn't speak much. Due to his natural indifference and temperament, Gao Gung and Zheng Qiuo were on the side of Wei Bo, who was about to be promoted to a god, and said a lot of good things for the brother who couldn't speak. Seats are limited, so no one can really let anyone squat down to eat, so they didn't call Zheng Dafeng and Dawa Xianwei for dinner. Chen Pingan took Lu Xianying and Gu Qin for a walk down the mountain, chatted for a while, and then they returned to the northern part of Jianghu. Chen Pingan entered the house at the gate of the mountain, only to find that the two gatekeepers were sitting opposite each other under the eaves of the side room, holding rice bowls, eating a pot of steamed cabbage and tofu, talking and laughing, having fun. Daoist Xianwei also asked the mountain master if he had eaten, and if he hadn't eaten, it was a trivial matter to add a pair of bowls and chopsticks. Qin Pingan said with a smile that I had eaten it myself. I cooked it myself. There were too many people, so I didn't call you. Daoist Xianwei said with a smile that it's all right, but in fact, both he and brother Dafeng had an expression that they were lucky they didn't call us to go. This made the Shanju, who was still a little bit guilty, so angry that he went to the kitchen with a familiar way and brought a small bench and bowls and chopsticks and sat down to eat. Qin Pingan said that next time we will eat stewed fish with tofu, thousands of tofu and 10,000 rolled fish. Xianwei looked at brother Dafeng, and Zheng Dafeng looked at Daoist Xianwei, and they both used their eyes to hint at the other party that you would decline this matter. Master Qin Shan didn't bother to look at their eyebrows, he just said that it's a deal. Why are you being polite to me? While eating and chatting, Qin Pingan said that Pei Qian had secretly bought a nearby mountain, Fiolu, which was sold fairly and with a land deed. The hilltops adjacent to Luopi Mountain, apart from Huiming Mountain in the north, together with Tiandu Peak, Tiaoyu Mountain and Fiolu Mountain are all close neighbors of Luopi Mountain. And Shui Dongshan has also secretly acquired the Jumping Fish Mountain. Xianwei listened absent-mindedly, took a chopstick of white and tender hot tofu, and blew a few breaths, just thinking about what kind of fish the next time the mountain owner will stew the fish himself. He is a gatekeeper and can't talk about these mountain gate chores. There is nothing to say, it has nothing to do with people's soft words. Luopa Mountain does not pay attention to the rules of class and realm, it is purely because the Taoist priest himself is not interested. Qin Pingan said, the last time the Patriarch Hall of Jisa Peak had a meeting, I just chatted a few words about the rules of opening the peak and the division of the top of the mountain. And without a master it's not a problem after all. Zheng Dafeng nodded, it's not a trivial matter to have a good name. If the mountain has an owner, someone must live there to help gather popularity. Just having the spirit of heaven and earth is not enough. An empty house has been unoccupied for a long time. Will get old very quickly. Zushan is Luopa Mountain, which has gradually become vassals and changed to Qin hilltops. When the last meeting was held, there were 14 in total. Balu Mountain, Cayenne Peak, Xianxia Mountain, Cheetah Back, Pearl Mountain, Niujiao Mountain, Huanghu Mountain, Huiming Mountain, Zhusha Mountain, Weixia Peak, Sword Worship Platform, Xiangshan Mountain, Yuanmu Peak, Xiaodugang. Now with the addition of Fiolu and Tiaoyu Mountain, there are as many as 16. As for the mountains to the west of the old Liju Cave, there are only 42 hilltops. The Longquan sword sect is in the hands of Lu Xianying, and a few more were moved away not long ago. In this way, Luopa Mountain almost occupies half of the hilltops. Zheng Dafeng smiled and said, after returning to Luopa Mountain, Chief Zhou has been working in secret all the time, and he must buy a few more hills for Luopa Mountain. What is being grinded now is the Shindu Peak that is said to be very tight-lipped. Chief Zhou seems to have met the two foreign immortal forces. Some of the Feijin messengers who communicated with Xiangshan were also quietly intercepted by Chief Zhou, read the contents of the secret letter and then released. So Chief Zhou is more sentimental these days, sometimes sighing, sometimes smiling brightly. It seems that Chief Zhou is under a lot of pressure when Xiaomo comes to the mountains. Speaking of this, Zheng Dafeng couldn't help laughing and said, a romantic and passionate person who sees different things and wants to change, is most afraid of retribution and being forgotten by others. Chen Ping hesitated for a moment. Tell Jiang Shangzhen later, don't buy the mountain for now. Zheng Dafeng asked, maybe the number of hills is less than half? Chen Pingan nodded, leave some leeway for now, and it won't be too late to wait until the situation becomes clear. Zheng Dafeng hummed, this is safer, I can't eat hot tofu in a hurry. The back of the squid was leased to Lu Chonglan and Zhuchai Island. Niujiao Mountain is where the Xinjia Ferry and Beiluzi are located. Jinzhu Mountain, which is closest to the town, is too small to open up mansions and build large-scale construction projects. Xuanhu Mountain used to be Shuijiao Hongxia's water palace dojo. Hongxia wanted to donate the mountain top and the lake bottom water palace to Yunzi, but Yunzi was not a descendant of water, so he chose to stay in Huiming Mountain to live in seclusion and practice Taoism. Chen Lingjun said that Yunzi looks stupid, but he is actually very smart, and Huiming Mountain is a first-class mountain in the territory. Chen Ping privately gave the Yuanmu Peak adjacent to Huanghu Mountain to Li Baoping. The natural scenery is beautiful, but now the humanities should not be underestimated. Chunyang Lu Yen once left a Taoist poem. The reading post has been assigned to scholars like Lin Shuyi and Li Huai. Of course, the sword-worshipping platform was reserved for Jianxiu. Fortunately, Guizhujiu came to fill in the vacancy, and settled there so that two girls, Nailin Yudu and Yao Xiaoyan, were willing to stay at the sword-worshipping platform. The sword-worshipping terrace to the west is lonely and far away from Luapa Mountain and other vassal hills. It is really outrageous for two little girls to live there. The sword-worshipping platform used to be very lively. Sui Yu used to practice there with grass. If it was a lively scene, it would be scattered all over the place. Qin Pingan insisted on making Cui Dongshan unable to eat. Qin Pingan brought back 9 sword cultivator embryos from the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Yu Qingzhang, He Xiangting and Yu became apprentices, and changed the genealogy, which means that it has nothing to do with Luoba Mountain. Although Baixian and Sun Chunwang were still monks of Luoba Mountain genealogy, they stayed in Mi Xiefeng's cave to practice their swords. The rest of the children were poached by the Qingping sword sect, and each followed the master's genealogy and became the next sect, and then practiced swords in Tonggishao. The master that Nailin Yudu worships is Changming, the patriarch of the law in Luobashan. Yao Xiaoyan is a teacher of Kong Ho, the notation official of Luobashan. She spent a long time with the criminal officer Hao Su in the prison of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and as a white-haired boy who transformed into a demon, she is an arsenal in itself. Except for those very few killers, she understands everything Wu Shuangjiang understands. According to Qin Pingan's original intention, Nuanshu could choose Xianhuan or Xiankishan, but the girl in the pink skirt did not want to leave Lupashan. Jiang Chu, who became a Fulu monk, could occupy Balu Mountain if he hadn't become Cui Dongshan's direct disciple, and he could help hold the peak opening ceremony only after he formed the Golden Core. Zheng Dafeng asked, it seems that you are in a hurry? Chen Pingan said, when the discussion is over we have to retreat and practice swords, improve the rank of Feijian, and strive to get from the well to the mouth of the well. After that, once the private affairs are over, we will travel far again. Taoist Xianwei always pays attention to the content of this kind of conversation, and doesn't pay attention to it. Qin Pingan asked with a smile, Taoist Xianwei, do you have any favorite mountains? Taoist Xianwei was taken aback for a moment, then shook his head again and again, don't dare. Saying dare not rather than no. This is the old Taoist experience of Taoist Xianwei who has traveled the rivers and lakes for many years. Zheng Dafeng smiled and said, I took Taoist Xianwei and Taoist past a lot of feudal vassal hills. There are all good things here, but I have the best eye for the fragrant volcano, and I have a special liking for it. With a smile on his face, Qin Pingan said in a slightly surprised tone, is it because I like the climate on the Xiangshan mountain, and fell in love at first sight after climbing the mountain and enjoying the scenery? Taoist Xianwei was a little embarrassed, so he had to explain in a low voice, I feel like a cold temple there, no one worships incense for too long, and only some incense ashes are left. Xiaodao sees things hurt, but I feel sad it's not about taking it for yourself. Chen Ping picked up a chopstick of cabbage, thought about it, and said, now the Taoist priest Xianwei has apprentices and Lin Feijing is a serious Taoist priest. The master and apprentice really have to have a Taoist temple. Suitable. The Xianwei's eyes were shining brightly, and it's such a good thing to accept a cheap apprentice? Could it be that we will charge more in the future and try to open a private altar one day? The young Taoist priest with the wooden hairpin in his head was thinking about it, but he said, The Taoists are not the genealogical monks of this desolate mountain in our family, but they can occupy a mountain. It seems that it is not suitable for etiquette? Next time the Patriarch Hall will discuss. Xianxia brought up this matter to discuss. Will the voice of opposition be too loud? If so, after all, Xiaodao is not discussing matters in the Patriarch Hall of Jisa Peak, not to mention the embarrassing situation that cannot be debated, and some proposals are not approved. Losing the majesty of the Mountain Master, there is one shortcoming of Xiaodao that is the most difficult to correct. That is, his face is thin and his heart is soft, and his conscience will be disturbed, so how can he have the face to continue to guard the door here? The few words of Taoist Xianhui, the meaning behind them, are all knowledge. Inside and outside the words, it's all about the eyes of the heart. In the Patriarch Hall of Jisa Peak, reject the Mountain Master's suggestion? Noisy. If Taoist Xianhui was to tell the truth, he would set off firecrackers in the square at the gate to celebrate as soon as the discussion was over. Zheng Dafeng coughed a few times and tapped the side of the pot with chopsticks a few times. The heat, pay attention to the heat. It's too late, you have to pay attention to proportion, be careful with the Mountain Master and go downhill. If you don't want the Mountain Master to make things difficult for the Mountain Master, you really don't have to embarrass the Mountain Master. Taoist Xianhui immediately understood and tentatively said, if the Mountain Master is willing to show love, how can Xiaodao be ungrateful and disappoint the Mountain Master's kindness? And he will definitely do his best in the future, dare not slack in the slightest, and continue to put all his energy on looking after the mountain gate up. Chen Ping said with a smile, then tentatively decide that the Xuanhuan mountain belongs to the Taoist master Xianhui and his apprentice Lin Feijing. Of course, this matter still needs to be discussed and passed. It is estimated that it will not be a big problem. Taoist Xianhui said in a deep voice, who doesn't know that when we discuss matters in the Patriarch's Hall of Jisa Peak, the Mountain Master is the most open-minded and never speaks out. Zheng Dafeng hummed, it's all clear. Chen Pinggan sighed rarely, thinking whether to let Zhu Lian find Xuanhuan and come to Luapa Mountain earlier. Taoist Xianhui rubbed his hands and said blushingly, Shanju, to speak a word of conscience, you will not be rewarded for nothing, and you are already mentally prepared to be laughed at by fellow Taoist Jing Qing. Own a mountain that is nominally your own and open up a dojo. This is the age of the fake Taoist priests, a beautiful thing that they never dared to dream of in the past. What kind of sleeping position do you have to sleep in such a beautiful dream? What's more, my Luapa mountain is not the kind of small sect where 5 middle-level gods occupy the mountain and set up a sect. It is a chi practitioner who climbs mountains and cultivates Taoism, and can occupy the top of the mountain casually. I heard Xiaomi Li said before that the rules of my family's Xiaozong are so strict and the threshold is very high. Cui Zongzhu said that in the future, there is no way to hold the peak opening ceremony unless it is in the nascent soul realm. Ordinary Daxian mansion on the Hauranjiuzhou mountain, it is a customary rule that it is not a golden core that cannot be opened. For the top sects in the Hauran world, I am afraid that the ancestral court is located. No matter how big the territory is or how many mountains there are, it is not enough to be divided into immortals. Isn't there an authentic ancestral court, upper sect and lower sect? What's more, aside from individual cases, the sects of the world and the ancestors of the mountain are almost all from small sects and small monks. The ancestral courts are usually of average size at first, and they are not very imposing. Luaba Mountain is on this list. Chen Ping said with a smile, my family doesn't talk about the two schools of thought. Taoist Xianhui only needs to feel at ease and accept it calmly. Piyun Mountain is about to hold a sealing ceremony, do you want to go there with me for a drink? Zheng Dafeng shook his head, I'm too familiar with Weibo, so I won't join in the fun. Xianhui followed suit and nodded because he really didn't have much savings and his pockets were too shy, so he was embarrassed to eat and drink for free. Even if he wasted money, he couldn't come up with a decent gift, and he couldn't embarrass Luo Yuoshen. I heard from Xiaomi Li that there are many inside stories about the Beiwen Night Tour banquet. Every time, the gods of mountains and rivers and chi practitioners who participated in the night tour banquet were all heroic and generous. Just because the female officials of the etiquette department of Piyun Mountain, after registering their names at the foot of the mountain to receive gifts, they will roll their names, loudly telling them who they are, what mountain they are from, and what gifts they gave. At that time, Xiaomi Li laughed and had an idea and made a very vivid analogy which sounded like giving a menu. Xianhui can even imagine the big customers, who lined up behind and haven't given out their gifts. Hearing the roll call in front, he calculated the amount of money converted into immortal money, gritted his teeth and silently added gifts. The weight, the amount of fairy money, the scene before participating in the night party and drinking, already drunk? In this ceremony of conferring the title of the and conferring on the right by the sage abbot of the Confucian Temple, Piyun Mountain still failed to invite Mr. Bai Yi and Mr. Junqian. However, a night banquet can still be called shining and shining with stars. The appearance of Taofu Mountain in Zhongtu and Yuxuan's talisman surprised the entire Beiyue realm. This made Jinghao the #1 person on Luxiaza Mountain with the Taoist name Qinggong Taibao's ascension realm, not so eye-catching today. As far as Luapa Mountain is concerned, 2 suzerains appeared at the same time, Qin Pingon and student Chui Dongshan. There is also the longevity of Luapi Mountain. The chief worships Zhou Fei, Qin Pingon brings the first apprentice Pei Qian and the mountain guard to worship Zhou Mili. There are also children in Xing Yi and girls in pink skirts, and a mountain gate that is said to be Luaba Mountain when it is called. The second place is a girl in a mink hat dedicated to Xiego. The Dali court asked the Minister of Rites to go to Piyun Mountain to congratulate him. Although His Majesty the Emperor did not come in person, he had a handwritten congratulatory form. People from many surnames of Xiangzhu Kingdom came here. On the side of the Longquan sword sect, Xia Ling, who had just left the customs and entered the Jade Realm, presented congratulatory gifts on behalf of his master Yuan Qiong and suzerain Lu Xianying. At the same time, he also brought a gift from Beiju Luzhou Tianjun Xiashi to his descendant Xia Ling. But this is not the most unsettling thing just because Xia Ling took out one congratulatory gift after another, and the last gift at the bottom of the box came from Bai Yujing's head teacher Lu Chen. Next, another scholar named Xan Jian visited Qiufeng Temple with his friends and brought a gift for the latter. At the roll call it was Qin Qinglu. Xan Jian, the dragon in the poem, and Qin Qinglu, the man who slays the dragon, are 2 names with extraordinary meaning. If they are separated and congratulated separately, others may still have some guesses and are not sure whether it is true or not. But when Xan Jian and Qin Qinglius names were put together, the head priestess of the etiquette department tremblingly called them out, and even handed over the pen in her hand to the scholar, saying that the tiger has a life, so she must be bold. Ask Mr. Xn to write those 2 names in his own handwriting, and leave the authentic calligraphy. Then even a fool will know them. It's them. This time, the 5 mountains of Aquarius Island and the abbot of the Zhongtu Confucian Temple were conferred the title of God, and were held at the same time on the same day. Therefore, it is not only the Piyun Mountain that is very lively, but the Wuyue Mountain Juanfu is full of guests, full of voices, and join in the grand event. Zhongyue holds the Purple Mountain, and the tiger is Jin Qing, who is bestowed the divine title Mingzhu by the Confucian Temple. Dongyue Qishan, Mengrong, and the name Heroic Spirit. The implication is so great that it is beyond imagination. Beiyue Piyun Mountain Weibo was awarded the title of Night Tour. It's not surprising at all. If not, it would be a strange thing. Xie Ganzhou Mountain Tong Wenchang, the name is Dazhu. Nanyue Zi Tongshan, female tiger Fan Junmao, her name is actually another name of the mountain, Tsuiwei. One of the 10 philosophers of the Confucian Temple, Mr. Dao Neighbor, is in charge of Abbot Beiyue ceremonies. The big monks who came to Piyun Mountain today are Yu Xian, Xan Jian, Jinghao, and Lu Chen, Qin Qinglu, Xiashi, who asked to congratulate them. In this way, in terms of power, among the 5 mountains on a continent, Piyun Mountain deserves to be the leader. Wei Bo, who was dressed in a snow-white robe with a golden earring pinned to his ear, took the scroll of the holy name of Li Sheng's handwriting from Mr. De respectfully. Wei Bo bowed to thank him, then turned around and spread out the scroll. The word Night Tour turned into a gorgeous golden light, and the avenue manifested on the top of Piyun Mountain, blending with the water and air of Beiyue Mountain. In fact, there was no red tape in this sealing ceremony. It couldn't be simpler. The gentleman wearing a blue cotton coat and hanging a water ladle on his waist read a book of sages and sages, and then roughly talked about the historical changes of Beiyue and Aquarius continent. The title was bestowed on the gods, and in the end Mr. De told Wei Bo to speak kindly, a few auspicious words, and it would be considered a gift. Mr. De and the other 4 Confucian Temple sages, the direct disciples of the most holy teacher, did not stay long. After the ceremony was completed, they left almost at the same time, but they did not return to the Zhongtu Confucian Temple. It is a river called Xiaozhou in ancient times, and the water is named Panshui. There is Xiao in ancient music, and Zi said it is both beautiful and good. A tall old man stood by the water. Beside him stood the gentle Li Sheng, the solemn Ye Sheng, and the sad old scholar. There are still many sages with ethereal figures and only a Confucian temple of Yin God left to accompany the sages. They are already at the water's edge, waiting for Mr. Da and the others to complete the seal. Some sages have long since died, and have disappeared in the long river of history. The immortality and immortality of their fame and career are left to future generations to comment. The most holy teacher smiled and said, "It's been a long time since we got together like this." The gentlemen and masters by the river all agreed, but silently bowed to the most holy teacher. The most holy teacher standing at the front turned sideways and bowed to them in return. After getting up, the most holy master turned his head to listen to the music. It seemed to be listening to the beautiful ancient music, or the sound of human reading. Although the Xiao music is beautiful and good, the latter seems to be better. The old man took the lead in sitting on the ground by the Panshui River, and said with a loud smile, "The last lecture has cleared up doubts. Questions and answers, or answers with rhetorical questions. We all know that there are endless words." In the Western Buddhist kingdom, under the Bodhi tree, a middle-aged monk sat cross-legged and began to preach. In the world of Qingming, a young Taoist priest came to the gate of a small Taoist temple in the ancient battlefield of Zhuolu. At the gate of Luapa Mountain, Taoist Xianhui blamed himself again last night before going to bed, and made up his mind that tomorrow he would not be able to read miscellaneous books, but must read a serious Taoist book. Today in the sunny day, Nian Jing read another miscellaneous book, relished it, dipped in his saliva and gently turned a page of the book. The content was too exciting, so he went back and read it again. The orthodox Taoist book that the fake Taoist priest put in the sleeve of the other Taoist robe seemed to be patiently waiting for the arrival of the next tomorrow. It seems that if you plant in spring you will harvest in autumn, and the year is good when it is orange, yellow, orange and green. Taoist priests who only regard this mountain as their hometown only say that my hometown is where my heart is at ease. In the mountains to the west, there is a Honkim lake that emerged after the mountains were removed. The wind blows the lake in ripples as if whispering the mountains and rivers are reunited. On Luapi Mountain, Cui Qing left a book box and asked Nuanshu to keep it on his behalf. The two parties had agreed that the old man asked Nuanshu not to talk to anyone, including the mountain owner Qin Pingan. Another day, on the square outside the gate of the Patriarch Hall of Jisei Peak. There was no rush to hold a meeting. The old scholar rushed to Aquarius Island, and they were all waiting for the old man to take his seat. The white-haired boy of the music editor of Luapa Mountain has another chance to show his talents. She regained her feminine appearance, set up the desk, pen and ink. The female crown is natural, her bright eyes are smiling and she is eager to try. In the world of grandeur, Wen Sheng is in the same vein. Old scholar. Personal disciple. Jun Qian Qin Pingan. Pass on to disciples again. Wu Yuan. Jing did it again. Li Baoping Lin Shui Li Huai thank you Yu Lu Dong Shui Jing Shijiachuan Zhao Yao. Chui Dong Shan Chao Qinglang Ningji. It stands to reason that they can sit down. Because in fact, like Qin Pingan's disciples Pei Qian, Guizhuzhio and Zhao Shuxia, and Pei Qian's disciple, Zhou Junqian nicknamed the Little Mute, although they are all direct and re-disciples of the mountain lord Qin Pingan, they are not strictly speaking, it is a lineage of literary saints. Then Zhao Wan, Jiang Chu, Cui Huaxing, Hu Chuling and others as Cui Dongshan's direct disciples, are also the same. Everyone was sitting upright with their hands clenched into fists and lightly placed on their knees. The old scholar let go of his fist, still looking forward, but raised his hand and patted the arm of the closed disciple beside him, and said in a low voice, "Thanks for your hard work." Qin Pingan also kept his eyes on the front, smiled and said, "Sir, it's not hard." The old scholar smiled from ear to ear and sat in the middle seat. The old man turned his head and had a discussion with Qin Pingan, a closed disciple. "Why don't we all sit down together as a souvenir?" Qin Ping nodded with a smile, saying that he listened to Mr. Xuanhuan Shu and Xiaomi Li were asked to help them go to the Patriarch Hall and move a few more chairs. But it's very strange, the number is wrong, why it seems that there are 3 extra chairs. And Qin Pingan also changed his seat, and there are 2 empty chairs away from Wenxin? Jun Qian also stood up and changed a chair, so that there was no one sitting around the old scholar. Qin Pingan sat upright and said softly, "Dongshan." Cui Dongshan smiled brightly and in an instant, there were 3 more people in the 3 empty chairs. Cui Chan, the first disciple of Wenxing, sat between the old scholar and Junqian's junior, and the junior and Qi Jingchun sat on the other side. The youngest child, a little mute named Zhou Junqian, was unwilling to sit next to Master Pei Qian, and the child only wanted to sit in the most inconspicuous position on the side. Cui Dongshan whispered, "Master sir, why don't Bao Ping and I stand? Just stand behind you." Qin Ping turned around and asked, "Sir, what do you think?" "Anyway, I think it's feasible." The old scholar looked left and right and asked with a smile, "Do you have any comments?" Li Baoping and the others stood up with a smile, moved the chairs away first, and then stood behind the uncles and uncles in the first row. The old scholar suddenly twisted his beard and said with a smile, "Pinyin, you can change positions with the left and right, don't worry, he doesn't mind." Chen Pingan hesitated for a while, and had to follow Mr. S' arrangement. Just when the music editor at Luopishan was about to draw a picture scroll, Chen Pingan also smiled and turned his head and waved, "Junshin, come here." The blushing child went in without knowing it and didn't move for a while, but the child was gently pushed and shoved all the way to the teacher's side in a daze. Chen Ping smiled and said, "You can just stand here. Probably this is an intergenerational relationship." The child subconsciously straightened his back, clenched his hands into fists and tightly pursed his lips. With a gentle smile, Chen Pingan reached out and gently wrapped his arms around the child's shoulders. I recommend the new book, A Life Like a Dragon by the old master Guanzhong on this site. The quality and updates are guaranteed. Sword of Coming Chapter 1204. For this trip to Jisa Peak in Luapa Mountain, the old scholar came and went in a hurry, but he didn't explain the reason to Chen Pingan. I believe this closed disciple guessed it. This is because of the Panshui discussion of the Most Holy Teacher, which talked about the related knowledge of asking the sky. The old scholar is better at this, whether it is asking with the old gentleman imitating by Yujing, or preaching to Yuxian outside the sky, all showed the knowledge of the old scholar so that he could ask Li Sheng for leave, and take half an hour halfway to take this trip to Luapa Mountain. In the end, I really wanted to keep the old scholar who stayed for a few more days, so I just apologized to the children with a bitter face, and then took Chen Pingan alone for a short mountain road, speaking quickly, and the old man asked a few urgent questions. "Are you sure you can return to Yupu after this retreat?" One thing about Chen Pingan is good, very good, that is, he doesn't deliberately tell reassuring white lies. "I'm sure. You don't have to worry about this, sir. Take a step back and say that students have their own means. The method of tempering the Yao sword, why didn't you ask Bai for advice? After all, it is the tip of one of the 4 fairy swords Tai Bai. Chen Pingan who was in the city at that time, Firen who was in the wilderness, Lu Kai who was beside Zhou Zi, and Zhao Yao who traveled the colorful world each got one. I have never been ashamed to ask about this matter. Deep down in my heart, students are always used to seeing Mr. Bai as an unattainable man in the sky. Then put this matter aside for the time being and you still have to ask. Don't miss it when you pass by. Before Bai Yi returns to Qingming Tianxia, you must have the cheek to ask about this matter. By the way, sir, it is not easy for the old man. Abducted to Luapa Mountain as a guest, did you let this iron rooster lay an egg before leaving? Senior, you half gave and half borrowed 1,000 gold and fine copper coins, a big deal. This is not enough. This is just the meaning of the question. It only says that the ancestors left a lot of purple here. First come, first served, white is fine, and the heavenly king can thank you. As long as you are a Taoist priest you can buy it. There is a chance, and in the end I gave old you such a great deal of fate and he didn't express it? To be honest, this majestic Dao Qi was originally reserved for Taoist Yuxian by the Dao ancestor, so others might not be able to it away. But if it wasn't for the old scholar who deliberately started the conversation and gave it a step down, Yuxian, who is so smart, wouldn't have the face to come to Aquarius Island to take it away. After all, what kind of attitude is there in the Confucian temple? Still have to be scruples. But since the literary sage, who is the talker of the Confucian temple for the time being, has said so, Yuxian is naturally happy to go with the flow. Since senior you didn't say much about it, he'll just pretend I don't know anything. You kid, you have a thin skin after all. It's fine to ask him for a few talisman books that belong to the untold secrets of Taofu Mountain. As long as you are willing to ask, he will definitely be willing to give it. Forget it, go back and ask Lao Air to ask for it. There are 5 sects in one mountain, can there be fewer celebrations, big and small? Sir, if a Taoist temple in Haoran Tianxia is purely named after Taoist temple, will it violate the Confucian temple etiquette? It's like calling a mountain Qingshan, rather than Cuiwei, which is more controversial. One can imagine how difficult it is in Haoran Tianxia, where integrity is the most important thing. First of all, you have to pass the level of the Zhongtu Confucian temple. Borrowing money from others and repaying debts are difficult things. The old scholar twirled his beard and pondered for a moment. I can only talk about something. It's okay for Li Sheng to say that Ye Sheng may not agree to nod, and there are 3 principal and deputy leaders of the Confucian temple. Mr. probably needs to quarrel with them. That's fine. There's no need to let the master go to war at the Confucian temple just to make the senior even better. Mr. Zheng from Baidi City has made great progress. Good thing. No wonder Lu Qiqing began to swagger again. Where is the wilderness? No big deal for the time being, just a small thing. Not long ago, the Confucian Temple established a think tank with more than 300 people, deliberately increasing the proportion of young people. This temporary government office is located in the land in the city at the ferry crossing. Every family has a share and one person can be sent to participate in it. If there are more, that person has to be exceptionally good to serve as a military officer. It was originally planned to divide into 3 levels. That boy Xuanhu said too much. Well, the harm outweighs the benefits, so it is simply divided into 2 layers of staff, internal and external. After all, the upper and lower levels are not very pleasant to hear. It is said that there are hundreds of schools of thought, but it is actually a general term. There are 62 schools of thought that are truly recognized by the Confucian Temple and clearly defined as family, large and small. Tracing back to the origin, every home was once a kind of painstaking and intellectually exhausting exploration of how the future world will go in the ancient years. Among them, Su Bai's child is more outstanding, but there are 3 young people who are even more powerful than Su Bai. One of them, you are very familiar with, is Lin Junbai, the new national teacher of the Xianhuan dynasty. Speaking of this, the old scholar sighed, it's a pity that his close disciple just entrusted Wei Bo, the of Night Tour, to give the booklet to the Confucian Temple. Qin Pingan asked, in general, is it because the old people are more aggressive and want to win a few decisive battles earlier to expand and stabilize the first mover advantage, but the young people are relatively more stable, looking for ways to advance step by step and strive for success? In this battle, there are only the first and the middle game, or the middle game is the end. The purpose is to conform to the word controllable from the beginning to the end, and not give the wild world any chance to come back, or even give them any chance of accident. The old scholar laughed heartily. Hey, you guessed it right. Qin Pingan asked curiously, sir, the other 2? Apart from Hengku Academy Shanzhong Yuanyu, who is the other? The old scholar Nian Su smiled and said, he is a disciple from a miscellaneous family. Regarding this war, he used a metaphor. Raising his hand and waving his sleeves, the old scholar smiled and said, push. Allow me to be aloof within Jiazi, gain the greatest military exploits with the least damage, and flatten half of the barren land. Qin Ping was taken aback for a moment, and couldn't help admiring, good means great courage. We must know that in the middle and late stages of the war, xianxia, under the secret arrangement of the Confucian Temple, led by the 10 dynasties, began to exhaust the treasury and spare no effort to develop various war weapons that could change the local disadvantages. For example, the Dali dynasty teamed up with the Mahis to build the mountain ferry and the sword boat, but this is only a very small part of the battlefield and the effect has been verified. The tribe retreated back to the wild like a tide, so xianxia still has a lot of killer weapons, which are still hidden in the bottom of the water. The old scholar hesitated to speak. As expected of being the most considerate disciple of the closed door, Qin Ping smiled and said, I have already asked Lu Su to send news to Xianxin Chaogun and the others. Once Lu Su arrives at Xuanjiao Mountain, all sword cultivators can withdraw from the other side. Underground mine veins. After that, whether they are willing to enter the Confucian Temple to serve as military fighters and make suggestions, I can only give advice as a friend, and I can't force it. Qin Pingan would have to bear great risks and responsibilities for letting the young sword cultivators from the Summer Palace go to Fuyazu, and let the Howran sword immortal who had been to the Great Wall of Sword Qi guard their way. Once there is any problem, the sect behind those young people, even if they don't say it, they will have a big pimple in their hearts. After all, Scrofularii and the others, which one is not a candidate for the top positions in the future ancestor hall of their respective sects? You need to have qualifications, you need to be talented, you need to be good, just like Chao Qinglang is in Luapa Mountain. The old scholar nodded with a smile, don't force it, you must not force it. Old scholar, why doesn't your closed disciple come? Could it be that from now on, at a young age, just lie on the credit book and enjoy the blessings? Those who dare to ask such a question in person must be old friends who are familiar with the old scholar. When Sheng, will Lord Qin Shan enter this city to serve as a military officer? There are more people who ask this question, most of them are energetic young people, not necessarily all out of admiration, but some of them feel that what is going on in the world is after all, seeing is believing. The old scholar vowed, Pinyin, if you are willing to go to the Demai ferry for a stroll, let me tell you from the Mo family giant, if he dares to shut you down, I will block his door. Qin Pingan got a headache when he thought of this, so he had to ambiguously go with his husband. The old scholar looked at the sky and said, "We have to go." Bai also asked in his heart, "Should I wait for a strange fellow Taoist here or look for him over there?" The old scholar smiled and asked, "You want to chat with Mr. Xiaoma about your swordsmanship experience?" Bai also said, "When we meet we can talk quickly. If you don't like it, just meet up and meet each other." The old scholar hesitated for a moment and said, "Since you want to go back to Xuandu Temple, go back quickly." Bai Yi really acted resolutely and really flew up to the sky with Jun Qian. The old scholar stomped her feet anxiously, and Jun Qian smiled from the bottom of her heart. "Sir, about the fairy sword Tai Bai." Bai also left a booklet on the table for the junior brother to read by himself. The old scholar asked, "How thick is the booklet?" Jun Qian replied honestly, "Not thin, not thick." The old scholar stared and said, "What's the use of Pingan asking you, senior brother? You wait for Sir." Jun Qian said helplessly, "Sir, you really can't blame me. I tried to persuade him, but Bai didn't listen. You can't ask him to write more words with his tiger head cap." The old scholar said in a slow tone, "Jun Qian, don't cause trouble when you get there. Sir is not around and Bai Yujing is another sight, so take it easy." Jun Qian hummed. When he arrived at the gate of the sky at Aquarius Island, Bai also raised his fuhu cap and bowed to Pan Shui and Xiaozhou to say goodbye, and Jun Qian did the same. Today's discussion in the Patriarch Hall of Jisa Peak is actually relatively simple. Apart from determining the ownership of the mountain, it is to determine the identity. A disciple of the outer sex handyman, turned into a monk of the inner sex genealogy. In fact, whether it is the outer door or the inner door, it is just a decoration in Luapa Mountain. Luapa Mountain is not an enshrinement, but it is a direct disciple of the ancestral hall of the enshrined people. Therefore, the white-haired boy's status as an inner monk is still unique. And from today on, because of his status as a score editor, the white-haired boy can have a chair in the Patriarch Hall. Then, the mountain master Chen Pingan officially accepted Guizhuzhou and Ningji as his personal disciples. Zhang Lv Changming was still in charge of sitting at the table, grinding ink, writing, recording names, and writing them into the genealogy of the ancestral hall. As for whether the sword boat will return to the mountain or to the sect, anyway, it is for Cui Zongzhu to understand what is the end of betrayal. Not to mention Chief Zhou, who is like a brother with a different surname. Even the old Jia, the lecturer of the Xiaozong Academy, doesn't give half a word of justice. In the end, this sword boat returned to Xiangshan, but it could be leased to Xiaozong. After discussing the matter one by one, Chen Lingjun seemed to be sitting upright, but his eyes were empty. Yu Xian had attended Beiyue Fengjing ceremony before, and immediately returned to Tianwai Dojo. Chen Ping's reminder caught the old man's heart. At that time, Chen Lingjun was sure that the old had really returned to Xinghe, so he dared to complain. He sat with him as the host for a long time before, and he didn't have a morning drink in return. Then there is that Mr. Xian who usually smiles and nods when he meets him on the road. He actually recognizes the dragon slayer named Qin. That's Chen Qinglu on the first page of Passerby Collection. The master of Zhengzhuzhong in the White Emperor city of Zhongtu. Chen Lingjun really felt a lingering fear after thinking about it for a while. It was too scary. In the future, I have to stay away from Mr. Xian, and I have to let my good brother Qinzhua stay away from Mr. Xian. Forget it, don't point fingers at how friends make friends, you continue to be your friends. At most, the next time you meet again to drink, you have to make side swipes with that poor man. Your friend Mr. Xian is amazing, and he knows the legendary dragon-slaying man. Is a friend of a friend of a friend count as your friend? Forget it, don't be self-defeating, opportunistic tricks are out of the question. The worried Chen Lingjun turned her head and looked at the stupid girl sitting next to her. She kept watching until she frowned and almost turned her head to stare. Only then did he look away, folded his arms around his chest. Alas, the little girl is from every family, how could she know that her ambitions are lofty, and he is not uncommon to talk about many unknown feats. If there is a gathering, there will be a breakup, waiting for the next meeting. Wu Yuan is the governor of a state, and Zhao Yao is a minister of the first department, both of whom are high officials. Chen Pingan took the two nephews to talk. Just to say one thing, the Dali court will set up a special official position to deal with certain small things. Pull out the radish and take out the mud and then fill up the pit. For example, there was a corruption case in the officialdom of a certain county at the foot of the mountain, or there was a violation of the law and prohibition in a certain sect of the immortal mansion on the mountain. Once discovered, the imperial court began to dig deep all the way. It doesn't matter whether it's a surname, an earth immortal or even a monk of the upper five realms, there is no upper limit. The Yu family of the Queen Yu Mian, the family of the Empress Dowager Nanzan or the Xingaozong, the Yunlin Jiang family, as long as they are in this one line, all of them need to prove their innocence in the government office of the Dali Criminal Department. Inside the imperial court, the files were recorded one by one, and the Dali official residence report was distributed to the governor and the generals of the states to form a rule. In the hands of the gods of mountains and rivers. Wu Yuan was silent. Zhao Yao asked with a smile, even if it's a litter, how do you calculate the size of the fault? You can't kill them all with a stick, can you? Qin Pingan said, you are the servant of the Ministry of Criminal Justice. You are responsible for the specific conviction and accountability. All the details are drawn up by you. I am only responsible for helping you and the Ministry of Criminal Justice to finish. During this period, all the mutual protection between officials and the human relations that are regarded as ordinary things, should be the top priority of this government office led by you. It is these people and things that must be caught and watched. The officials who can enter this government office must be young and low-ranking. This is called a humble position. At the same time, you secretly set up an internal organization that is not open to the public to monitor the words and deeds of these young officials. Behavior and official circles can give them a chance to make mistakes, you can even do it on purpose and then punish them with small punishments. At that moment, you can tell them clearly that this mistake is only yours for the time being. Filed here, all the officials of the Ministry of Punishment and the Ministry of Officials, even the xianxia, cannot be consulted. So the selection of those little things is a bit particular. The entry point can be middle-level officials. I suggest that there are two types. One is the young and strong faction who have a smooth official career but are good at making a fortune. There is no merit or demerit. One is those who have just retired from their old age and returned home but made a huge fortune. There is nothing to let the past go. Of course, your criminal department took the lead and led the case, but at the beginning of the investigation, you can take the initiative to contact the local government. What you want is someone to help to report the news, what you are looking for is the usual sympathy. Therefore, those Ministry of Punishments secretly enshrined, and some of them will be busy next time. Zhao Yao nodded and said, yes. Wu Yuan said helplessly, then let me open the mouth, lest Zhao Shilang and the Ministry of Punishment have the suspicion that they don't have enough power. Every mountain has its Taoist spirit, and every government office has its pure and turbid official spirit. Zhao Yao asked, is there anything else? Qin Pingan said, it has something to do with you but it has little to do with it. The Imperial Court will re-edit the fish scale book on the mountain and down the mountain in the near future, and it will be included in the latest Beijing inspection plan. The two dukes. Then there are the officials of the Ministry of Officials and the temples of the city god at all levels, who regularly go to the city of Dali to discuss matters. On the premise of not violating the duty of the city god and not letting the lords of the city go beyond the rules of the underworld, they communicate with the officials of the two capitals. If there are old accounts in Yangjian, check the old accounts. The old almanac has been turned forward. If the history is really long, such as 100 or 200 years, then there is no need to implicate some descendants with innocent backgrounds, but some so-called upright officials and celebrities in their hometowns don't think about continuing to erect archways over there, and the local county annals may have to exchange praises and criticisms to change the statement. Of course, if the family traditions of these still prominent wealthy families don't change, then your Ministry of Punishment there is something else you can do. Wu Yuan asked, why don't you just put up a notice and let the people in the market and the countryside know about it? Qin Pingan was silent. Zhao Yao shook his head towards Wu Yuan. Qin Pingan stood up and said with a smile, then do your own work. Li Baoping was going back to Dasui Shanaya Academy, she wanted to sort out her reading experience. Pei Chen said that she would go with Sister Baoping. Li Huai planned to go to the wild world because Taoist Nen was busy digging in Dadu, so he needed a new guardian. After all, Taoist Nen was abducted by Qin Pingan to Tanggishao, so Qin Pingan hesitated who to follow Li Huai to replace Manhuang Taoting as the guardian. It's just that Xiaoma is still in the Qingming world, and Jiang Shangzhen and Cui Dongshan still need to stare at the lotus root blessed land. Thank you, dog. Xie sneered and said, it's no wonder that old Bai Jianxian established a sect but didn't spread his branches and branches. So far there is only one direct disciple like Su Xian. It seems that he is worried that the master will blame him for over-accepting disciples. Qin Pingan joked, is that how you evaluate Bai Lei Jiangxian, who may be the founding emperor of your Lu clan? Thank you eyes and said quietly, the Lu family is destroyed, Guizhua is cut off, and I haven't seen him help. Back then, Aquarius continent was still a small continent at the bottom of the vast world, and the Dali Song clan was far from the later dynasty of one country and one continent. Huquizan's Dali dynasty after all, it is not difficult to keep Lu's Guizhua. Chen Pingan just shook his head with a smile, and didn't bother to talk about reasoning to sprinkle salt on her wounds. In fact, thank you, why don't you know the superficial truth of, the immortal master on the mountain cuts off the world, and the descendants have their own blessings? She is indeed just angry and has to complain a few words. Yulu's expression was complicated and he never spoke. Qin Ping smiled and said, the bridge returns to the bridge and the road returns to the road. 1 yard belongs to 1 yard. If Bai Shang is really your ancestor, don't be hypocritical. Children who cry will have candy. Bai Chang and I are not mortal enemies, and now it is the relationship between well water and river water. He uses his ability to find someone to plan the luck of swordsmanship in the 2 continents. Half of the good things, whether there is any feud, whether to ask the sword, are all on the table. In short, in this matter, you and xianxia are outsiders, don't get involved. Yulu nodded and said with a smile, I'm just waiting for your few words. Qin Ping patted Yulu on the shoulder, as expected of the person who watched the day and night with me. He is as shrewd as a fool. Yulu laughed and said, thank you. Thank you so badly, what's wrong? Hearing the tisk-tisk sound from the side, xianxia glared and said, Qin Pingan, what are you so angry about? Qin Pingan raised his face and said, I am Mr. Cui Zongzhu, how do you talk to master? As a result, Yulu got an elbow. Xianxia walked down the mountain quickly. Qin Pingan rubbed his shoulders, raised his chin towards Xianxia. Ha! Yulu looked bewildered. Ha! Qin Ping curled his lips and jokingly said, the 7 orifices have connected the 6 orifices. Yulu couldn't help laughing. You know best. The Sable Hat girl sacrificed an unknown ancient treasure ship, which was faster than the Liuxia boat, and took Li Huai and his personal maid to go overseas together. She is on official business, after all, she is the 2nd best worshipper, she has nothing to shirk, but she must go and return quickly in case Xiaoma will return when she is not in the mountains. Xiego was sitting on the railing, the wind was blowing on his face, the girl stretched out her hand to hold on to the ermine hat, her temple hair fluttered endlessly. 10,000 years ago, her aptitude for cultivating Taoism was really good, so she had to find something to do, otherwise she would be too boring. After much deliberation and an idea, then find a Taoist companion. The little fox Wei Taijin was standing by the railing, chatting with the young but old-fashioned Miss Xia about some anecdotes about the landscape. In an instant, Xiego stood up, turned his head again and said with a smile, why do you look so shabby? The old blind man was stooped and said with a smile, don't take a pee to see yourself. Xiego choked for a moment. The old blind man said, Bai Jing, you don't have to protect the way. I appreciate your kindness. I will take my apprentice back with me. Xiego said, you can't control it. The old blind man rubbed his chin, it's up to you. He still has a good impression of Bai Jing. Sensing the commotion here, Li Huai walked out from the other side of the room, and held back for a long time before finally calling out, Master. The old blind man frowned, tilted his head and asked, what? Li Huai rolled his eyes and said, come on, it's comfortable to call you an old blind man, isn't it? The old blind man nodded and said, good apprentice. Xiego stretched out his hands to cover his face, what a pair of treasures. Taoist Xianwei, who has been relying on nonsense to maintain the majesty of his master, finally felt proud for a while on the apprentice's side. Intentionally ignoring the reason, he led Lin Feijing on foot all the way to the foot of the fragrant volcano. The Taoist priest Xian Weilan raised his voice, pretending to be solemn, pointed at the high mountain and said in a deep voice, Feijing, this place is called Xiangshan Mountain. Huashan, from now on, we, master and apprentice, will open up a dojo here, which can be regarded as our own mountain. Lin Feijing was greatly surprised. Luapa Mountain convened the Patriarch Hall to discuss matters, but the master and he didn't even have a genealogical identity, let alone participate in the discussion. Why did it open the peak? The old Xianwei smiled and said, a teacher is not the kind of person who likes to brag about himself. Heroes don't mention their bravery in the past, so you may not know it. In this Luoluo Mountain, the serious and temporary gatekeeper is a teacher. Before there were only 2 people, Jing Dafeng and Chao Qinglang. One of them was an elder who watched Qin Shanzhu grow up, and Chao Qinglang, besides being Qin Shanzhu's proud student, is now the peak master of Tongyi's next sect. So, there are genealogical monks who go up and down the mountain every year, and there must be more and more good times every year, but this gatekeeper is the only one who is not boasting about being a teacher. To say that this is the truth of the conscience of heaven and earth does not seem to be counted. If you want to say that Taoist Xianhui put gold on his face on purpose, you can tell a lie, it's really not true. Lin Feijing was shocked and said, "The Luapa mountain has already descended? Master and old immortal Jia can really hide their words, and they don't leak any water. This effect is what we want." Taoist Xianhui taught, "There is no fuss about this. When Luapa mountain is promoted to the authentic ancestral court one day, it will not be too late for you to come and be surprised." Lin Feijing was so impressed, he slapped his head and said in a sincerely convinced way, "Sure enough, the master has succeeded in cultivating the mind, and the disciple has become impatient." Xianhui waved his sleeves and said, "Mountain climbing." The master and apprentice began to figure out how to build the dojo. To sum up and calculate, in short, it is to do according to one's ability, whether the dojo is grand or not, the key depends on whether the money in the pocket agrees or not. For example, Lin Feijing, who is an apprentice, is going to spend all his savings to build a decent house for his master, especially the study room. The master, however, intends to build several pavilions on this mountain road for people to rest. The matter of naming is not his expertise, and it is simple: Sanli Pavilion, Woolly Pavilion, and Shirley Pavilion. Catchy and memorable. Lu Qiqing took his friends to visit the mountain, a few days later than Qin Pingan expected, and this time he went out, dressed very plainly. "It seems that the last time I got off the boat at Niujiao Ferry, I saw the most proud man in the world, which frightened our pavilion master Lu. On the account books of Luapa Mountain Spring Mansion, there is still a large surplus of nearly 4,000 grain rain coins, so there is no problem in repaying the debt of Baidi City immediately by converting the gold fine copper coins into 3,000 grain rain coins of fairy money. It was just because Qin Pingan made a no-capital and huge profit deal with Han Xiaosa, so he was not in a hurry to pay it off all at once." Lu Qiqing took off the pink Taoist robe and changed into a scholarly attire, and then took the new friends he met on the cross-continental ferry to visit Luapa Mountain and meet his old friend Qin Pingan. With money in your pocket, don't panic. What's more, this bag of money was a gift from his senior brother. Lu Qiqing guessed that the fairy money contained in it was unlikely to be Guyu money, and most of it was Shaoshu money with few inscriptions. Lu Qiqing didn't have high requirements for this trip to Luaba Mountain, as long as he could go up the mountain. Whether you can drink or not, don't make any extravagant expectations. Qin Shanzhu, who never thought of wearing a green shirt, long gown and cloth shoes, actually stood at the gate of the mountain and waited early. The notation editor started to get busy again. Okay, finally came to the conclusion that it wasn't the upper 5 realms. Whoops, there are still 2 Longmen realms. What a surprise. There's no reason for the white-haired boy to be unhappy. His smile was so bright and sincere that it nearly stunned those guests. Luapashan hospitality, so approachable, so warm. Could it be that he was really under the influence of Pavilion Master Lu? Qin Pingan explained with a smile, "Gu Qin is still busy being Lu Xianyang's best man. Longquan Jianzong has a lot of things to do. He didn't wait for you, the uncle here, so he went back first." Although Lu Qiqing was skeptical, but he was in a good mood, so what if it was fake? It was a polite remark from his close friend Qin Shanzhu. How many people could have this honor? Climbing together, exchanging polite greetings, Qin Shanzhu did not neglect anyone, except for answering every question, occasionally changing the subject and going through needles as if walking door to door. As a result, Lu Qiqing discovered that Qin Pingan was actually more familiar with those friends' mountain gates, master biography and patriarch's deeds than himself. Qin Ping personally led a group of guests to Zhu Lian's house, and had already prepared drinks. They found a little girl in black with a cotton bag slung across the door. 2 tables were put together in the courtyard and benches were set up. She is the enshrined guardian of Luaba Mountain, and Zhou Mili, the right guardian. Qin Ping touched Xiaomi Li's head and introduced with a smile, "As for the wine on the table, it's the Dumb Lake wine brewed by my own shop. Because I wanted to entertain guests, I didn't bring a golden pole and a green bamboo stick. I originally practiced several ways of self-declaring my identity, such as the rough voice and the hero of the rivers and lakes clasping his fists." Xiao Mili still had stage fright but said softly, "I have seen all the immortal masters." Except for Lu Qiqing, who knew Zhou Mili's true identity, the rest of the immortal masters from Biezhou were in a hurry to return the gift, and for fear of breaking the etiquette, they honored that little girl as Zhou Mili. "As for the wine on the table, I have heard of it. How could I not have heard of it? This is the famous Dumb Lake wine of the Great Wall of Sword Qi." The flattered people carefully picked up the wine bowls, took a sip of the wine, tasted it attentively, and after tasted again, needless to say, it must live up to its reputation. Xiao Mili scratched her face, feeling a little embarrassed. but sitting next to the good Xianxia, she was always not afraid of anything. Just now, when they saw that unrecognizable Zhou Gongfeng who sat down so naturally, everyone was shocked again. As expected of the protector of Luopa Mountain, he was able to sit on the same stool as Chen Yingguan. Could it be that it started in Yupujing? In the Haoran sect, of course, the mountain protection offerings are not comparable to ordinary offerings, and indeed have a detached status, but in this kind of public occasion, they are on an equal footing with the master of a sect. Xiaomi Li gently tugged on the sleeve of the good man Xianxia. Chen Ping shook his head with a smile, indicating that he didn't need it. This group of people is not familiar with them, they are just friends of Lu Qiqing, so it is not possible for Xiaomi Li to treat guests like this. Xiaomi Li raised her head, frowned and scratched her face. Okay? Chen Pinggan smiled and had no choice but to nod his head. When it comes to hospitality, you are the most competent. Xiaomi Li then grinned and began to distribute melon seeds to everyone. It is probably also a kind of practice to make some meaningless words interesting. Lu Qiqing sighed unceasingly. How could he have imagined that such a simple boy who looked like a gourd in those days has become so humane and sophisticated? I have to admit that my years of cultivating Taoism have really been practiced on dogs. After all, Qin Pinggan didn't have so much free time to waste here. Fortunately, without Lu Qiqing's asking, someone took the initiative to ask if he could take a stroll around Luopa Mountain. A boy in Xingyi was poking his head over the gate. At first, he saw that there didn't seem to be any old gods from passerby collection in the courtyard. He just listened to the chatter inside, and was horrified to find that the lord of the Lu Pavilion of Baidi City was hiding. Qin Lingjun ran away in a blink of an eye. Well, Lu Daochun is in this booklet, but in fact his ranking is relatively high. It stands to reason that Pavilion Master Lu is the Jade Raw Realm, so he shouldn't be honored. But the problem is that this person is the direct disciple of the Dragon Slayer, so Yupu Realm shouldn't be treated as a fairyland? But anyone who has anything to do with Qinqing Lu, not to mention direct disciples, even disciples and grandchildren, Qin Lingjun will hide away when they meet each other. Of course Lu Qiqing saw the sneaky boy in Xingyi. Although he was acting weird, he didn't take it seriously. But if Pavilion Master Lu knows the truth, only a part of it is needed. For example, the boy in Xingyi once called his senior brother a nephew, and the senior brother didn't say anything. It is estimated that Lu Qiqing's Dao heart is about to crumble. Lu Qiqing stayed alone and gave the bag of money. In fact, Qin Pinggan was waiting for this. Because Xiego mentioned this thing before, saying that he couldn't see through what was inside. The blindfold that even Xiego can't see through must have come from Zheng Zhezhong's handwriting. After entering the wing room, Qin Pinggan opened the money bag face to face. It was not the expected gold and fine copper coins, but the copper coins circulating in the market, the most common kind of mountain coins, with good or bad quality and good or bad materials. They are the copper coins minted in the first year of the founding of some dynasties in the history of Haoran, and the rain coins in the last year of the dynasty. The beginning and the end are like the end. Lu Qiqing looked at the pile of rusty old copper coins, and the confident Pavilion Master Lu was so embarrassed that he wanted to dig a hole in the ground. Lu Qiqing subconsciously clarified the facts. Master Qinshan, it was indeed given to me by senior brother. I didn't even open it once. I only gave it away because of the importance of the gift. It's absolutely true. If there is a lie, I will send it to Liuli Pavilion. Move out of Baidi City? This is more sincere than any vicious oath made by Lu Qiqing. Qin Pinggan nodded and said, Mr. Zheng must have given it to you, and then deliberately asked you to pass it on to me. There is nothing to doubt. Lu Qiqing heaved a sigh of relief and asked curiously, what is the purpose of this move, brother? Qin Pinggan said, have you ever heard an old saying that all good and filial piety come first, and all evil and adultery come first? Lu Qiqing became more and more puzzled. Of course he had heard of it, but what does it have to do with the senior brother asking me, a little junior brother, to donate copper coins? Qin Ping smiled and said, First. Lu Qiqing is still confused. First? But what does it have to do with goodness, evilness, filial piety and prostitution? Qin Ping twisted his wrist, took out the dry tobacco rod, skillfully put in some tobacco that Zhu Lian had sun-dried himself, and explained with a smile, everything has an end, there is a first and there is a later. It is similar to Go, the minted copper coins in the first year of the founding of each dynasty accounted for half of the share. Mr. Zheng reminded me that I should not forget my origin in life. It is due to the inconspicuous dealing with people and things. And the money in the last years of the dynasty is to beat me again, so that I will not get carried away. The chess game finally survived from the middle game to the final stage, and I lost the whole game in one careless move. If you want to start well and end well, You must understand a simple truth of half 90 for 100 miles, and the remaining half of the copper coins, that's why. Lu Qiqing nodded vigorously. The senior brother really meant something. Qin Ping said with a smile, in addition, there are family affairs involved, you will not be interested. Lu Qiqing was not polite to Qin Pingan, and immediately cut off the conversation. I'm interested, why aren't you interested? Qin Pingan hesitated for a moment and said in his heart, the old master of the Taoist temple in the East China Sea once reminded me with a falling leaf that in fact the old site of the blessed land Jianghu is still there, and it can be connected with the mirage city of the Dequan dynasty. Lu Qiqing didn't speak any more, it really was something he wasn't interested in. Qin Pingan had other ideas. Pei Qian once said that when she was by the well, she saw the old Taoist reach out and grab a big sun from the sky. Pei Qian, the little heightened back then, was a little money fan and named himself Qian. Lu Qiqing wanted to say something homely, but seeing Qin Pingan's eyes narrowed in thought, he had no choice but to hold his temper and sit where he was. Going up the mountain to collect herbs, there was an occasional heavy rain, and the water level of the stream soared. This is how the Taoist Wu Di and the female ghost said, I learned how to climb mountains when I was young. That is a breathing technique that has not been recorded in any way. If you say it is superficial, it is superficial, and if you say it is brilliant, it is also brilliant. Confucianism pays attention to food and sex, people only need to know how to control themselves. Taoism has the method of heart fasting for purifying the heart and abstinence, and Buddhism also has the method of sleeping with a knife for keeping precepts. The two religions have many methods and clear rules and precepts. After all, they work the word heart. Just can't get around the of men and women. The house is scorching hot, and the is like fire. How to tame this heart, this passion, this desire is of course a big pass. Before, Qin Pingan had half-talked with Yu Xian saying that he had referred to Buddhist theories, but he couldn't get it right because Qin Pingan had long since discovered that he seemed to be in a kind of mysterious relationship with men and women. To put it simply, Qin Pingan's situation of feeling with few desires, or desire to be born of sentient beings, is that as a man Qin Pingan is very normal. The only abnormal thing is that compared with common sense, it is putting the cart before the horse. Then Qin Ping was guarding the Great Wall of Sword Qi all those years ago. Anyway, he had nothing to do, so he began to review the game carefully and kept pushing back. The answer he got was the result of the method of breathing. Qin Ping's second guess was just a guess. It was very likely that from that day on, he should have left a certain gambling table because he lost the qualification to continue betting, and in exchange for a way out. And this moment, maybe it happens to be the turning point of everything after that, just like the saying in my hometown that bad things are not afraid of early and good things are not afraid of late. Regardless of whether the heaven is beautiful or not, in fact, the way of heaven and the heart of heaven are selfless. Therefore, if there is gain, there will be loss, and if there is loss, there will be gain. It is only in seeing and not knowing. Previously at the Damu Temple of Autumn Qi Lake, if the Tiger Huaifu and Qi trainer Sun Wanyan's questions were added together, it would be tantamount to asking a good question. And Qin Pingan's answer was not sloppy at all, and he gave an answer clearly, whether he could go up to the mountain to practice Taoism, and the level of achievement in Taoism had nothing to do with the good or evil of people's hearts. There was a big exam in the town that year. But there was only one examiner who set the questions and the chief officer who graded the papers, and that was the old man in the backyard of the Yang family pharmacy. The rules, details, and process of this big exam are covered by clouds and fog, and are not known to outsiders. In fact, Qin Pingan's guess was right. Old man Yang in the backyard of the pharmacy once said privately that he never thought that the hardest fated ones would win those with the best fates. Qin Ping regained his senses and said with a smile, "Please help me congratulate Fu Jianxian and Fu Zhongzhu." Lu Qiqing nodded with a smile and said, "It's easy to say. Fu Zhi is more pleasing to your eyes, and he has always regarded it as a pity that he has never been to the Great Wall of Sword Qi. This is a big truth. This guy Fu Mo has always had his eyes above his head, except for the senior brother. There are not many people who can fall into his eyes. Fu Mo sees himself as a senior uncle, and he is only a senior uncle, and he is the same as that little gook, and Lu Qiqing didn't have any grievances about this. After all, he was a direct disciple of his senior brother, so he was not arrogant, which made him feel disappointed as a senior uncle, and everything is fine now. When you close the door, your eyes are not your eyes and your nose is not your nose. It doesn't matter. When you go out, Lu Qiqing are still their uncle. There was a light rain, the drizzle was hazy. Qin Pingan just sent Lu Qiqing to the gate of the yard. Lu Qiqing was going to find the group of friends who came here full of joy. Anyway, Qin Pingan gave himself enough face today. Qin Ping smiled and said, "The wind and rain are boundless, my friend cherishes it." No matter how stupid Lu Qiqing was, he knew at this moment that these words were not just for himself. So Lu Qiqing made a serious call on the matter and said solemnly, "Qin Pingan, take care of each other." Qin Ping hit the iron while it was hot, since it is a friend who can call him by his first name. Lu Qiqing laughed and said, "Then don't talk about money, it hurts feelings." Reading does not feel the spring is getting deeper. A lonely but not deserted mansion in the mountains. The girls in the boudoir don't know how to worry, and Biqiong wears a green snail bun. The patriarch of law at Luapa Mountain who is away from home is like two different people. Zhang Lv Changsho has a few books on hand at the moment, although they also write about xianxia wuxia and talented scholars and beautiful women, but after all, the content they read is different from what Jing Dafeng and Taoist Xianwei read. She squinted her eyes and smiled at the moment, with a relaxed attitude, watching a small-scale scene. The food boxes on the table were opened, and there were various kinds of special pastries and preserved fruits. She doesn't like to go out of the house to chat with people, and it seems that no one likes to come to her house. There is nothing wrong with it, she is happy to be quiet and at ease. Anyway, she doesn't need to practice, she just spends her time casually. In the previous gathering at Jiaisfeng Square, when the white-haired boy drew the first scroll, in fact, Shi Ro, the acting shopkeeper on the other side of Qilong Lane, and Lin Feijing, two disciples of the Chaotu shop's old immortal Jia, even Bai Deng and the others had a share. They were all notified, and they rushed to Jisa Peak one after another, but none of them were left behind, as if they were all to be frozen in the picture as a souvenir. At the beginning, Changsho didn't know her son's intentions. It was only when she saw the smiling boy in Tsing Yi and the stern-faced girl in pink skirt next to him, and then her eyes wandered to the most inconspicuous person. Changsho suddenly understood. It was the middle-aged man who was neither a Qi trainer nor a pure martial artist. He came from the Great Wall of Sword Qi. When he first arrived at Luapa Mountain he was still a teenager and he was the same age as his fellow countryman Jiang Chu. Now Zhang Jiazhen has graying temples. It's hard to be young again. Every possible reunion is a comma. But don't forget, all gatherings are just commas after all. If the road of life is full of gatherings and partings and farewells, then the more people who cultivate the Tao, the more successful they will be, and there will be more separations and goodbyes. Another example was when Jing Dafeng put his hand on Zhao Shuxia's shoulder. In a sense, Zhu Lian, whose real age was already 77, was standing at the very side. Dong Shuijing, when he was young, opened a wonton shop next to the incense-burning shrine in the mountains. I'm afraid that no one will believe it. It is rare to come here to invite friends to cook in person. In the past, whenever Dong Shuijing came here in his free time, he would cook a bowl of wonton for himself in the dead of night when the door was closed. This time I made an appointment with a few familiar business partners, 3 men and 2 women, all young people, at least they all looked like this. They were Qi practitioners and also belonged to the young people on the mountain. 30 years ago, together with Dong Shuijing, none of them had the current family fortune. It was all the vacancies left by the nobles of the Dalaheo clan and the first-class fairy mansion on the mountain who secretly moved out and left Aquarius Island. The young people on the table, or the families behind them, took the opportunity to fill the vacancies. If the former wants to come back and compete for territory with their group of rising stars, it will not be so easy. A young man with the appearance of an aristocrat did not hide his contempt, and said with a sneer, "Good horses don't turn their heads back, they really have the face to return to Aquarius Island. Brother Dong, what do you say here in Dali? Don't talk about it in business, do you?" Dong Shuijing said, "I won't tell anyone, at least for the time being." A woman stretched out her hand and gently waved the hot air above the mouth of the bowl. "I heard that they have found their footholds in the southern countries. Bargain?" The man sitting on the bench with her was chewing on wontons and said vaguely, "It's nothing strange to run away when things are not going well, and come back when there is a profit. Even if the Dali Song family loses half of the country, even if there is no new appointment, the national teacher is not something these can break their wrists. If I were the new national teacher of Dali, the first thing I would do after taking office would be to expel them all from Aquarius continent." Someone immediately dismantled the stage. "You are going to be the teacher of the Great Li Kingdom." The man rolled his eyes and said, "Qin Shan is not even the master, but I am the ass." "Brother Dong, have another bowl. Do you have coriander?" "I don't want coriander. I really can't stand the smell." Dong Banching, "Hares a bottle of old vinegar. If you don't instigate a few sips you'll feel bad all over." Speaking of it, it's because the position of Dali Guosher is always vacant, and the mountains in the southern countries are up and down, so they dare to jump like this. By the way, I heard that there is an endless stream of pilgrims seeking marriage in the Tiefu Jiangshui temple. Brother Dong, is it really so spiritual? It is said that it is like the temple buried in the river in Tanggishao. Pilgrims go there to pray for more success. There are two friends who made a special trip to the Dequan dynasty, which is very helpful. Dong Shuijing returned from the kitchen with a bowl, added coriander, and put a bottle of mature vinegar on the table. It's time to take over as the water god who knows what the priesthood is. Lin Shui looked like an outsider instead. It is already in the Jade Pu realm, and once served as the Chidu Temple Zhu of the Great Li dynasty. The state city of Chuzhou is lined with rows of streets and lights like daylight. It is known as the bustling and prosperous Jibanzhao. There is a mountain temple in this mountain, and the incense is flourishing, and the incense of thousands of wells and hundreds of sacrifices is full of incense. Worship from all directions is longing, all respectful. Dong Shuijing, are you familiar with Chen Shanju? Help me introduce him. There is an older sister in my family. She is eagerly waiting for Luapa Mountain to hold the mirror of flowers and water moon. Brother Dong, you know that I have never been in the habit of asking for help. There is something I really need to ask you for. You must take me to Luapa Mountain with a mission. My senior sister, Lost My Heart, is crazy. I heard that I came to the Dali dynasty, and I had to pass through Chuzhou to meet friends, so I insisted on asking that young hermit official for calligraphy, and I brought the landscape travel notes about his love affairs when he was young. When Dong Shuijing heard this, he said angrily, I advise you not to tell Chen Pingan about this matter. Lin Shui smiled knowingly. Indeed, it's not obvious that he came to the door to find a fight. The mountain wind blows, the 100 orifices are cool, and a bowl of wontons makes the heart hot. A young man drank the wine, knocked on the bowl with chopsticks, and sang in a hoarse voice. When the strong man is haggard, the mountains and rivers are broken and the wind is blowing. In the past there were all rich guests. A woman reached out and patted the tabletop and sang with it, Don't you see that when the hero is down and down, the horse is as thin as a stick selling a treasured sword, and now he is full of pride. Don't you see that the beauty is tired of dressing, her hair is as white as snow and she hates the bronze mirror, and she regrets not marrying the #1 scholar and becomes a merchant's wife. Don't you see that the old general's iron armor is clattering like a dragon, unless the spring dream comes back to the juvenile cluster, I would like to exchange my fame for my youth. Zhong Qian couldn't stay there and soon returned to Luapa Mountain. Once in the mountain, she went to the old chef's place for supper. Brought back some wine table conversation material. The members who were qualified to attend a meeting at the Dhamma Temple in Chiochi Lake, which was hailed as the summit of the world, went back to their homes afterward, and no one dared to reveal any inside information. But in addition to obeying the rules and not hurting the elegance, there were a few more harmless sayings, which were widely circulated in the jianghu, and they became popular all at once. Young hero, please draw your sword. On the mountain you fight with immortals, and those with high morals can add another sentence afterwards, it will be more offending. A swordsman confronts a swordsman, Chao and I is an honor to be defeated. A certain person wakes up after sleeping, and becomes the person who respects the etiquette of the world. Julian Zhengdafeng Jiangshangzhen. The three old bachelors gathered together to chat, and Chen Pingan would not go in even if he reached the door. Chen Lingjun was thinking about when to visit the blessed land of Lotus Root, so he felt that he had to have a good relationship with Zhong Qian, so he came here to toast Zhong #1. Jiang Shangzhen and Zhong Qian, the world's #1 martial artist in the blessed land, hit it off very well, especially Zhong Qian's two heartfelt words really touched Chief Zhou's heart. Emotional injuries are difficult to heal, and book addiction cannot be cured. What does it mean to suffer through life? It means not knowing when the gallbladder is broken. After supper, Zheng Dafeng lazily lay on the rattan chair of the old cook, Julien and Jiang Shangzhen sat on the bamboo chairs, and Chen Lingjun took a bench and sat between them. Zhong Qian hiccuped and patted her stomach as she left, she just missed picking her teeth with a bamboo stick. Julien patted the head of the little boy and Tsing-yi, Little fool, you are waiting for her, so why isn't she waiting for you? You can all grow up. Chen Lingjun didn't laugh or refute anything, just kept silent. Jiang Shangzhen broke the silence and changed the subject. Why hasn't Xiaoma come yet? Julien smiled, and when he came back he had to ask him a question. Xiaoma, have you ever seen a girl who is more proud than her? Chen Pingan returned to the first floor of the bamboo building. In the dead of night, the moon and stars were sparse, and he was lying alone on the bamboo corridor, drowsy and half asleep. The entire mountains, small towns, mountain roads and roads in the old Liju cave were instantly covered with golden flames, flowing like water. There is only one mud bottle alley which is still pitch black. Lu Xianyang and Gu Ken, who were supposed to have arrived at Longquan Jinzong long ago, were actually in the ancestral house in Qinpingan Nipping Lane. Lu Xianyang opened his eyes and cursed, while Gu Ken looked solemn and did not dare to speak. Lu Xianyang shouted angrily in his heart, "Qinpingan!" Qinpingan, who had a dream in the mountains, suddenly woke up, sat up, and in a daze heard Lu Xianyang say again, "You kid hit the wall again?" When he was an apprentice kiln worker, Qinpingan often had nightmares without knowing it, and it was Lu Xianyang who couldn't wake up, so he just slapped him. Qinpingan, who was sweating profusely, took a deep breath, shrunk down the mountains, and went directly to the gate of the ancestral house in Nipping Lane, opened the door and asked, "Why are you still here?" Lu Xianyang stared and said, "Gu Ken felt that something was wrong with you, and I thought his intuition was right, so he turned back without telling you. Tell me what's going on." Qinpingan closed the courtyard door and said with a wry smile, "It's more complicated. Basically, I set up a maze for many of myself, and each went to solve the puzzle. Earlier Yu Xian asked Qinpingan if there was a sixth floor. At that time, Qinpingan avoided the important and changed the subject. In fact, the real answer is yes. If it weren't for this, the trip to the Qinhuan kingdom was only about small battles like Li Baozhen and Lu Mao, and it wouldn't be enough for Qinpingan to bring the little lotus. Lu Xianyang said angrily, "What will happen if you can't get out? Go crazy?" Gu Ken was sitting on that yellow mud wall eating melon seeds without getting involved. It's just that those melon seed shells were thrown by Gu Ken to the yard next door to Song Chenchai. Qinpingan didn't even talk back, just said it wouldn't happen. Went to the house and moved a bench outside the door. Lu Xianyang was chasing and cursing over there, feeling puzzled, so he slapped Qinpingan on the head several times. Gu Ken let out a hey. Qinpingan said helplessly, "There is no end, it's not annoying." Lu Xianyang stood silently. Qinping smiled and said, "Sit down and scold?" Lu Xianyang remained silent. Gu Ken smiled and said, "Sect Master Lu dislikes you as a nascent soul realm, and you are not qualified to be equal to him, you have to stand to be superior to others." Qinpingan signaled Gu Ken not to work hard with his eyes, and then found a lame reason, "You are all in the Jade Realm, I don't have to worry." Gu Ken curled her lips, finished eating melon seeds, jumped off the yellow mud wall, clapped her hands and went to sit on the bench. Lu Xianyang stretched out his hands and pushed the two heads away, sat in the middle of the bench with his arms folded around his chest. It doesn't sound like a loud fart, but you are actually less worrying than a slug. Qinping's hands covered his sleeves. He sat upright and said with a smile, "Yes, yes, yes, good scolding." Gu Ken hugged the back of her head with both hands, stretched her legs and said with a smile, "That's a good scolding, yes, yes, yes." Lu Xianyang's face was sullen, but he couldn't hold it back. He still laughed and put his arms around their necks. Sword of Coming Chapter 1205. Chapter 1205 Aquarius Continent, Qingxing Country to the south of Dadu. A boy in straw sandals with a sword on his back, munching on steaming bucket cakes, stood at the edge of the crowded stage, not looking at the heavily made-up Huadan woman, but only at the end of the cut. In the dark night, in the mansion in the capital city of Yushuan Kingdom that is indeed often haunted by ghosts, but not haunted by ghosts, a Taoist priest finally got free after a busy day, lighting up the lamp to read idle books, and there are 2 plates of xiaxu side dishes on the table. This is a stall. Wu Di, a well-known fortune-telling Taoist priest, was looking through a copy of Heavenly Creation of Things, reading while reading, but picked out the content he liked to read, and read the 2 chapters Tao Yu and Hammer Forging repeatedly twice. During the period, the Taoist priest read from the preface, full of energy, among everything. This book has nothing to do with the advancement of imperial examinations and art achievements. Well, it's really well said. This is the real weight, master, tell yourself. The woman's voice outside the window sounded faintly, and the intruder was a real intruder. Then you still look so enthusiastically. The Taoist blustered and replied, "The poor Taoist is a Taoist priest with private registers, and he is like the one who went to Beijing to rush for the exam. What are you doing as a scholar?" Later, the female ghost in a bright red dress standing by the window, the female official in charge of unpacking the pomegranate dress for the empress in the past. She was really tired of listening, so she stood on tiptoe, reach out and tap on the paper on the window, asking the Taoist to read the Chu Tiller that you can enjoy just listening to. Wander away. The middle-aged scholar who copied the scriptures stopped writing, shook his wrist and turned his head to look outside the door. The old cobwebs under the eaves were broken and fluttering. There was no reason to remember what was written in a scholar's note. Containing spirit, all have Buddha nature. In the province of a secretary of a small country, he has been a borrower for the gentleman on the beam for a long time. He sits on a high beam and looks down at an official who has finished his duty. Cotton-padded clothes, come here to choose the few lonely books you like. Look around, there is no one around, in fact, only the subordinate staff at the door to help watch the wind. If there is any movement, the subordinate staff who got the money will remind the people in the house by coughing Lord Official. After the official put all 3 books in his arms, he seemed to feel that something was wrong. The cotton robe would not be ironed enough, and his feet might be exposed. When the subordinate staff locked the door, the civil servant looked back, thinking that one day when he became a high-ranking official, he must ask the Ministry of Households to allocate funds to rebuild this place, and ordered the guarding subordinate staff to be loyal to their duties. The precious books were moved home by elegant thieves year after year. A young Taoist priest finds a rough-looking rivers and lakes ranger with a big beard and sword, and they meet by a mountain stream. Xuanhuan smiled and said, "It's easy to find." The big bearded man named xianxia washed his face with water, squinted his eyes and said with a smile, "The good Jianghu mountain is not waiting, one of the 10 young people in Beipingzu with a promising future. Do you have to go to the muddy water?" Xuanhuan said with a sad expression on his face, "Master Xiangshan, to be honest, your formation is wonderful or not, and I can break it boldly. I can't stop you from avenging Ma Xuanhuan, but it can make you less go to the first level to rely on, and strive to win a chance for Ma Xuanhuan." Chen Pingan laughed and said, "Not to mention what will happen to the Ma family in the capital of Yushuan Kingdom, whether Ma Xuanhuan will seek death by himself. Why don't we just talk about how you left after breaking the formation?" Xuanhuan answered irrelevantly, "As long as Qin Shanzhu is willing to leave Ma Xuanhuan alive, I can give some of my family background, some gold and copper coins, and some ancient Taoist books to Qin Shanzhu." Qin Ping stood up and asked with a smile, "You, the guy who became the elder of his master, are stingy and not bold enough. Is Ma Xuanhuan's life so worthless?" Xuanhuan hesitated to speak. Qin Pingan said, "Whether you can break the formation or not depends on whether you seek death or not, and whether you can break the formation depends on my talisman attainments, but these are trivial matters and will not affect the overall situation. It's just that I don't care about Jianghu Mountain and Fengxue Temple. These 2 ancestral families of military families have always had a very good impression. Your seniority in the mountains is, after all, placed on the genealogy of the ancestors of Jianghu Mountain, so I would like to advise you, spare time, don't care about your head when doing things. Okay, let me say it's over." The Jindan Dixian, who looked like a bearded ranger, hooked his fingers at Xuanhuan. "Whether you break the formation or not, I will beat the young one first tonight and ask the old one later." Xuanhuan asked suspiciously, "You want to implicate my teacher?" Qin Ping said with a smile, "Why, have you already regarded me as an upright gentleman in the Confucian Academy? Then I will disappoint Jinrenyu, I'm sorry." Xuanhuan's expression was complicated. After confirming that Qin Pingan did not have the slightest bluff, he sighed heavily and made the best second. "Can I persuade Ma Xuanhuan one last time?" Qin Pingan nodded with a smile and said, "There's nothing wrong with this. It's hard for A to persuade you to find a dead ghost. Just go to the capital of Yushuan Kingdom and talk about the ugly words first and persuade you to return. If you dare to reveal my methods, this account will also be recorded on top of you and your teacher." Xuanhuan called the head of the Taoist gate, thanking the master Qinshan. The figure of the Taoist priest disappeared out of thin air. Lotus Root blessed land as the talisman avatar of the Taoist, went to Dai Mountain near the Qiwacheng Mountain Temple, and secretly engraved on the cliff, Dai leaf and high knots are born from the end of the hair. Then find Huang Mian, the young emperor of Songlai Kingdom, and tell him the answer in his heart, just 2 words, middle. At the source of a water vein in the territory governed by the water song Jian, he squatted down and gently put a green bead into the gurgling stream. The orb hovered in the distance and only slowly rotated. In the end he returned to the Dhamma temple of Chiochi Lake, moved a chair over by himself, and sat in the same place where the last meeting was held, thinking about the problem, whether it was Wujiang Yuanhuang, or the one who seemed to have taken the liberty to sacrifice a fairy rope nuns. In the world of Qingming, the view of Xuandu. Bai also appeared in Taolin, but failed to find Wang's son, so he had to find Yanzhua. In fact, he didn't ask anything, Yanzhua only said that he and Wang's son sent the old temple master to the door. The old temple master only said 2 farewell words. "Fatty Yen, don't forget to practice your sword while stealing peach juice to make wine and making bookmarks from peach leaves. Senior sister, help me to take a look at the peach blossoms next spring." The Dachao sect, who is already a ghost Su Jun who has completed the ascension state, Rereads a book on the desk. The same person reads the same book at different times and in different moods, such as reading a new book. Just talking about the article Su Wugue written by Yujing who taught Lu Qin, in which there was a sentence "Time is the emperor," which shocked Su Wan's heart and he couldn't calm down for a long time. In the Qingxin dynasty, Fu Xuanjie, a female swordsman with high hopes from the imperial court, sat on the futon under the porch, and beside her were two Taoist priests and sword immortals who couldn't be taller. The old temple master asked in his heart, "Xiaoma, do you know why I want you to stay here as long as possible?" Xiao Mo nodded and said, "So that I can take advantage of the situation to fill in a certain kendo." The old temple master squinted his eyes and said, "You don't want to? I'm ready. Even if Bai Yi returns to Xuandu Temple at this moment, I can let Bai Yujing stay there until the sword questioning is over." Fu Xuanjie felt a great pressure, almost suffocated. His breathing was difficult like a fish on the shore. "What, your friend turned against you?" Xiaomo nodded and said, "Not happy." The old Guanju was furious and said sternly, "Fellow Taoist, you should think clearly. This is very likely your only chance to become a pure sword cultivator in the 14th realm in this life." Xiaomo asked back, "So what?" Fu Zuanji's scalp was numb. Although she couldn't hear the heartfelt words of the two seniors, in this fight between the gods, if either party sneezed casually, it might make her body disappear and her soul fly away. The old temple master sneered and said, "Fellow Taoist, you are not like you anymore. I've stayed with Chen Pingon for a long time. The good ones don't learn from the bad ones and only learn the benevolence of women." The old temple master waved his hand, and the mist filled the air, creating a picture scroll of mountains and rivers. It was a gathering place for refugees in the blessed land of lotus roots. There was a young man who was a tortoise in that brothel. He described it as wretched, bowing his head to the guests. "See, this guy has been hiding here for many years. He comes from the barbaric Chongguang lineage, but he is a genius of the talisman. Duke can be cured, but he has tampered with all the latest editions of books in recent years. How can the disciples of the Jiang family stationed here be on guard? Skin debris, this guy has his own secret technique to blame Qin Pingon, and hundreds of thousands of refugees are waiting for the Luapa mountain, starving for thousands of miles, and the people are dying. All the causes and effects will fall on him alone. It's not possible even if Qin Pingon was cautious enough. Before the millions of refugees returned to their hometown in Tonggishao, they failed to catch the clues of Qin Pingon. This guy can also take a step back and pass these causes and effects on to a female nun who traveled far away in the Fox country. In the end, at least half of it has to be counted on Luoyuoshan. Wilderness Jia Xinjiang is recognized as the most unprovocative one in the 60 army tents, just because Jia Xinjiang once owned 5 sword fairy embryos, and they competed with each other for their backers and backgrounds. One was stronger than the other. Tan is the disciple of the great demon Yangji. Wuxia is Lu Cha's only disciple. Lu Bai is Wenhai Zhouma's direct disciple. Yu Si is called a son by concubine Fei. An Li Zhen is the closed disciple of Tua Yushan's patriarch who belongs to Fei Ran, who is temporarily added to the account. He is Che Yun's only junior, and later the co-lord of the wild. And this young monster monk hiding in the blessed land of lotus roots was born in a seemingly inconspicuous Guiyu tent with even less remarkable overall combat achievements. But it is a place where heretics and weird and evil spirits gather together. A total of 60 military tents have been set up in the wild world, led by the Jiazi tent. Over there are either thrones or old monks in the Ascension realm. For those who landed on Tonggishao, concubine Fei was in charge of the Guihai tent, and Yuan Shou, the patriarch who moved the mountain, was in charge of the Jiao tent. Ji Wei Zhang is the ruler of the sword immortal who is in charge of the overall situation. I heard that she has given credit to one of the 10 young people in the world. It's just that she didn't do anything serious from the beginning to the end. Only the Guiyu tent has neither great monsters in town nor impressive military exploits. But it was precisely this barbaric military tent that left behind some monks of the monster race either on its own initiative or as a last resort, and the most critical nails have not been pulled out by Tonggishao so far. Xiao Mo asked suspiciously, "You mean, are you using this to threaten me to stay in Qingming Tianxia?" The old temple master smiled and asked, "Why not?" Xiao Mo glanced at the blessed place and said calmly, "Death is none of my business. This kind of karma is separated by several layers. If one layer comes, I will cut off one layer with a sword." The old temple master stroked his beard and said, "If you say 1,000 words in 10,000, you trust Qin Pingan's methods so much?" Xiao Mo nodded. The old temple master squinted his eyes silently, his expression indifferent. Xiaomo was indifferent. The old temple master smiled suddenly and took out a rolled-up copybook from his sleeve. As expected of a fellow Taoist, if it's done, I won't keep you close. Daoist son has something to ask you and me. It doesn't matter if you open it or not, trust me. You understand his intentions. Why don't you guess? What 4 words are written behind the words, I invite fellow Taoists? Xiaomo didn't bother to guess and opened the copybook directly. After inviting fellow Taoists, there were indeed 4 words, higher and farther. Central part of Tongya Island. In a cave on a secluded mountain top, it is a place where birds don't in a small country under the vassal state. A man and 2 women lit a fire here, and one of the slender girls stretched out her hands to warm herself and asked with a frown, "What's going on?" All of a sudden, the man who was bleeding from his 7 orifices and his face was covered in blood cursed viciously, "The problem is that I don't even know what's going on." A precious and abnormal substitute talisman was hit for no reason, and the talisman shattered on the spot. And for some reason, Dao Xian has been fluctuating recently. If he said that he was worried about and held grudges by that young hermit, of course he was prepared for it. He did these things to disgust the other party. But for some reason he sensed 2 unusual moods one after another. The first one like a raging river rushing towards his face with big waves, but his intuition told him that as long as he is lucky, he can't avoid it, just avoid the edge temporarily. After all, his luck has never been bad. But the second one made him even more worried. It was not aggressive, like a poisonous snake was hiding in the shadows and it was already eyeing him. The girl looked dull and said, "Don't implicate me. I was arrested together. That guy named One is not a fuel-efficient lamp. He does things in a wild way. He doesn't look like a scholar at all." He said with a smile, "How many of us, please don't fall into this guy's hands, especially you. Do you need me to help you tailor a talisman?" With a bang, it's like a firecracker. You can be a sword cultivator in the immortal realm, and if you are lucky, you can get one xianxia to be buried with you, and you can be a good companion on the road to xuanhuan, which is not a loss. The girl continued to slowly cut through the palm of her hand with the blade, washed the knife with blood and looked up at him. Provocation again, "Don't blame me for having a sword fight with you." At that time, Zizuji Observation Platform, a scenic spot and historical site of Yuanju sect in Tongjishou, was here. I met my senior brother Qian who came later and Jiashenzhang Yusi. Concubine Jing called the young swordsman young master, and a slender woman with hollow eyes and dull eyes, who looked weak and wore a short knife on her waist. According to Qie Yun, the girl's nickname is Do Ko. She is such a girl who walks in the rivers and lakes at the foot of the Haoran Mountain, and is likely to be molested by the prodigal son, but she is the chief culprit in the destruction of Yezigang and Yuanju faction. She ended up dead without a whole body, minced into meat, so at the viewing platform of the Yuanju faction, even Qie Yun, an old throne demon with a treacherous personality, called her little aunt and grandma, begging her not to kill indiscriminately. Of course it's not that Qie Yun is soft-hearted, but the face of those female chi practitioners is something he likes and collects. The girl promised to just cut off the girl's head and leave it to senior Qie Yun. As for those male monks, let Qie Yun leave it alone. Although she wears a sword, she has always used it to kill people, and her methods are extremely cruel and ruthless, but she is a sword cultivator who hides her identity. Sword. It's a pity that Fijian's natal supernatural powers can't cover fear, otherwise she would have already reached the 5th realm, and might even be expected to be among the immortals. The graceful young woman at the side hurriedly smoothed things over and said, "Stop arguing, the 3 of us are now going to die without anyone, so why be angry?" Just talking about this, she couldn't help complaining, "I regret it at the beginning, I regret it, I should learn from that young hermit official and accept it when he sees it. Qingyang, I blame you." The man smiled, "I can't stand greed, it's because my Dao heart is not strong enough, and blaming others is even more detrimental to my Dao heart. It's so useless, how can I get into the upper 5 realms? For many wild monster monks, Dao names and so on are all vain things. Anyway, you can take whatever you like and no one cares, so it becomes not rare." The female cultivator's name is Xianzhao, and she comes from the Xuanhuan department of Guanghan City. Guanghan City is one of the 3 sects of the great demon Feifei. The woman complained to herself and said, "Oh, I used to think about warming Mr. Yes' bed with my sister. Elder sister Insu, who works in the wicker department, has followed concubine Fei back to the wild world. Her luck is very good. Maybe she will be the lord of Guanghan City in a few years." However, Yangzi's wife and aunt were stopped by Lu Qi, who had returned to Haoran at sea, and then arrested and imprisoned by the Confucian temple. she still took pleasure in others' misfortune. The girl sneered and said, "It's strange that you see takes a fancy to these two trash who didn't even enter by Jiangxian." Xianzhao lamented unceasingly and said, "What's the meaning of the nest?" She reached out to collect a ball of flames, put it into her mouth and chewed it carefully. There was a creaking sound. There was a long silence. She was very sad and asked a question, "Aren't we looking for death by provoking that young hermit?" The girl said calmly, "Then be more careful, it's just disgusting and disgusting to him. Don't look at him. Once we meet him face to face, 10 lives are not enough for him to kill him." Xianzhao nodded vigorously. Under the Great Wall of Sword Qi, how did Li Zhen, the proud disciple of Patriarch Tua Yueshan, die? And the sword cultivators who applied for the account in Jia later set up an ambush to kill Chen Pingan alone, and the wild world knows the result. It seemed that even Firen made a move at that time. Go Risk Scholar is really rich in the city, and he is more insidious than that kind of guy who has a bad stomach. The man said with a smile, "Wealth and honor are in danger. As long as the few of us can return to our hometown alive, there will be a lot of wealth waiting for us to receive the reward." The girl remained silent, and put the blood-drinking dagger back into its sheath. It is a correct choice to take risks and stay in Tongye Island. In a land of one continent, the mountains and rivers are broken, and the resentment is overwhelming. But not long ago, for some reason, the weather changed, which caused her to sit back and enjoy the road of sword refining, and the effect was greatly reduced. This made her enter the Jade Realm within 10 years, from a foregone conclusion to "it really can't." She glanced at the two guys who had fought side by side all these years. The man sneered, "Can you kill me? Is Gao Yijing amazing?" He raised his chin again. "It seems that she is not easy to kill. For example, Xinzhao once said to Yusi face to face, 'I'm tired of killing,' which is not an invitation for credit. If you don't have any real skills, you can't live today. Searching mountains from one continent is no joke. Especially those monks from other continents who have evil intentions, spare no effort." Xinzhao asked curiously, "Qingyang, who is your preacher?" The man said with a smile, "Heroes of poor people don't ask where they come from, heroes of Kasano don't need backing." The girl said, "I have always wondered how that young hermit could do the lettering. I can't even imagine what he will be like 100 or hundreds of years later." Just when Xinzhao was full of smiles and wanted to tease her, just before she said a word and she hadn't said it was safe, the man made a lightning move, grabbed her head and pressed it against the wall. The girl didn't even look at it, she just nodded and said, "It deserves it." Savage World. A pair of senior sisters and younger brothers were walking on the deserted night road. Zhou Qingao, as a younger brother, was asking the senior sister about some past stories about how the master taught him. Temporarily losing Chun Xiao, a female cultivator who is one of the celestial beings, is enough to fill in the vacancy. In fact, it is not a big problem. It would be a problem if Chun Xiao was imprisoned but remained in the wilderness all the time. For some reason, Zheng Juzhong didn't stop his disciple Gu Qin from taking her to Haoran Tianxia. And behind them, not far or near, followed a handsome middle-aged sword cultivator with a gentle smile. It was Zhou Mi's plan for many years and deliberately left it to the wild world. That's why there is an extra half-truth, half-false sword cultivator Xuanhuan on the barren land. Xuanhuan, Dong Sanging, one before and one behind, were the most promising sword cultivators on the Great Wall of Sword Qi to follow the boss sword immortal to enter the 14th realm. For thousands of years, the sword immortals who died in the battle of the Great Wall of Sword Qi followed one by one, but the ancestor who can be often mentioned by later generations of sword cultivators, Xuanhuan, is the first. Lu Bai subconsciously lowered his head and rubbed his hands and said slowly, "Mr. took us here back then. If I remember correctly, we will come across a village if we walk more than a dozen miles." Zhou Qingao asked, "Is there a way?" Lu Bai shook his head. "Without knowledge, it is a very common scenery. But the few of us were pleasantly surprised when we noticed the gentleman who deliberately put away his realm and cultivation base. I heard from the big brother Shouchen that at that time, the gentleman's face the joy I feel may be even more joyful than the xuanhuan, with a total of more than 60,000 characters that Mr. created for the wild world back then. Once Haoran Jiaxing, later wild and thorough, is regarded as the sea of learning in the world, the Toyua mountain in learning. Collect disciples widely, teach without discrimination. Moreover, Zhou Mi carefully cultivated every disciple, and only said that every young disciple who is a sword cultivator without exception, will be among the later Toyua mountain 100 sword immortal seeds. Jia Xinjiang Clogs, the closed disciple, is the only exception. The big demon on the throne, Bai Ying, once asked Zhou who was on the second throne, but at that time Bai Ying didn't know who she was. So Bai Ying didn't know that the question and answer between him and Zhou was actually a question and answer. Mr. Zhou wants to be the master of culture and education in our world? Not enough. Lu Bai looked up at the sky. Those who ascended to heaven and left with Master Zhou were Jianxiu, Kaiying, Tongxian, Tongyin, Yuzhao, etc. They all belonged to the younger generation of Wenhai Zhou's disciples. Those who remained in the world were the first disciple, the minister, the female sword repairer Lu Bai, and the closed disciple Zhou Qinggao, who used to be Jiashan Tent Clogs. According to the family rules established by the earliest master, all direct disciples who have a name but no surname need to wait until they break through the Great Wall of Sword Qi before they can choose a surname by themselves. Between Shuqian and Zhou Qinggao, Zhou still has a large number of personal disciples who can be called as intruders, whether they are obvious or hidden. As for how many people there are, probably no one knows. Zhou Qinggao, senior brother Shouqian, and senior sister Lu Bai didn't even think about getting together and finding out all the same sections. Since the husband did it on purpose, they don't need to add to the snake. Walking in the night, there are still some traces of mud ridges and ridges under their feet, and the undulating gleams of stars in the distance make it difficult to distinguish whether it is the phosphorescent fire in the tomb or the wandering fireflies. Wenhai Zhou, who once brought this group of direct disciples including Shuqian and Lu Bai, went on a study tour to the wild land together before finally deciding to officially start the war. Lu Bai said softly, "When Mr. saw the light, he took the lead and hurried forward and finally got close." The Mr. holding a bamboo stick was so excited that he wrote a poem on the spur of the moment, and returned to the guest late at night. Walking in the mountains, cold and leaning on the fireflies gathering in the earth. The moon is dark and the muddy path is slippery in the village shop, and the bamboo window is slanted to leak the mending lamp. The poem has no name and no preface. It is not only the beginning of the poem but also governs the whole. In fact, the meaning could not be more simple, but we students and disciples just listened and didn't dare to ask a word. The bamboo stick in Mr. S' hand was solid. Leaving aside those who practice Taoism, the old man can use it as a crutch on flat ground, and he can use it as a trekking stick if he still has the strength to climb mountains. Even though we've stayed by Mr. S' side for many years, we, together with our senior brother, Shouqian, still don't know what Mr. is thinking deep in his heart, and whether he will be sad. The xuanhuan behind him finally spoke and said with a smile, "It's just a groaning of a literati and refined scholar." He has always been good at pretending to be a tourist from a foreign country, and collecting grievances and poems to ease the worries of letting go of ministers and expelling sons. In the final analysis, it is Zhou who hates this world, and is disgusted by all the stupid things that are not as smart as him. So don't be complacent if you think you are his student, but your husband hides it well. He only has a faint hope for himself, and he is completely disappointed with everything in the world outside of himself, so he feels desperate. Zhou wants to change the human world by himself. The first test is how to successfully ascend to the sky. The second test is how to confront the patriarchs of the three religions. It is estimated that the third test will be how to return to the human world and then ascend to the sky. In the wild world there are hundreds of thousands of mountains. On the way there, Xiego deliberately stood on the bow of the ferry, opened his mouth wide, and barked because of an old blind man pulling the ferry. The fox charm Wei Taijin, who was already very close to Miss Xie, made up her mind to keep a distance from Xiego. When passing by the Yulongzong, Xiego just gave a vague report, claiming to be the second enshrined of Luapa Mountain, and his own mountain master will come here as a guest soon. All fairies remember to prepare the fairy wine. Wow! Xiego was squatting on the cliffside of the highest mountain, with her hands in her sleeves and her head bowed. Behind her were a few dilapidated thatched huts. The old blind man was miserable. He had no land and didn't know how to enjoy it. After all, Wei Taijin doesn't know the wilderness, she just thinks that the mountains are stretching here and the weather is great. The old blind man stood beside the girl in the ermine hat and asked, "Why are you wandering around grandly?" Xiego said, "Men and women are in love together, you are a layman, you don't even understand a fart, let me tell you a hammer." The old blind man said, "Isn't it just wishful thinking?" Xiego snorted, "It's just nonsense to pretend to understand." The skinny old blind man with sunken cheeks twitched the corners of his mouth. Xiego shifted his gaze slightly, looked at the dry toes inside the pair of straw sandals, retracted his gaze and sighed, Ji, what on earth are you thinking, deliberately tossing such a scrawny virtue, thinking back to the past, saying to be honest, if you only talk about appearance, Chin Chingdu and the others are not worthy of carrying your shoes. Well, there is someone now who is better than you in appearance and demeanor back then. The old blind man smiled and said, Oh? Then it's a pity not to sell your ass. Xiego screamed loudly, raised his head and stared and said, Old blind man, I warn you, don't tell a big yellow girl about these things. How many heroes in ancient times were misunderstood by the word love? Behind the back of the old blind man's hands, he rarely sighed. Now even the sword cultivator by Jing is no exception. Xiego asked with his heart, I really don't have a chance, how about meeting Zhou face to face for a while? The old blind man was silent for a moment. People who come out once or twice every 10,000 years are not just met. Xiego asked, How about that Zhongyan? The old blind man said, Just keep the pure heart of the sword. Humans are no longer human. It is more appropriate to treat him as a sword. Not all of them can be transformed into human beings with the 4 immortal swords. It is somewhat similar. Xiego stretched out a palm and shook it. Jitsi, don't be in a daze, bring some drinks to treat the guests. The old blind man smiled, stretched out a withered arm with little flesh and blood, and was about to untie the rope in his crotch. No alcohol, no urine? Xiego cursed the 3-character scripture and said in a bad mood, It's okay, I'm afraid of you. It's great to have a high realm. Just wait, next time you ask the sword if you don't level tens of thousands of mountains, I will take your surname. The old blind man sneered and said, Just because you want to enter the 14th realm? If you can succeed in Bai Jing, he'll chop off this thing in the crotch and make it for you to drink. Xiego stood up without the slightest casual look and said solemnly, What do you say? If you are only half a step away from crossing the threshold, why can't you enter the 14th realm? The old blind man said, People who cultivate the Tao, whoever is not stealing the way of heaven, someone who steals, lacks the means and lacks the heart, will become the ascension state, and there will be robbers. The heart is bold and it is called the 14th state. Xiego frowned and said, Just talking nonsense, these nonsense, my mother figured it out 10,000 years ago, can you tell me something serious? The old blind man said, Then it is not difficult to borrow and repay, which is the meaning of the title of the 14th realm monk. You are one of the top 10 people with the best qualifications I have ever seen. A Taoist priest of the same level, it is precisely because of this first-class talent to pay off debts that Zhongyuan's life and death are all in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and Bai has not become a pure sword cultivator. Manhuang got involved and then Bai Zhe drove him to sleep again. If Bai Zhe hadn't done this, you would have died long ago. That's not right, it won't be too early. You will meet Zhou, you know he has been there for so many years, come on, travel all over the wilderness. Besides planning, I have been looking for the best pair of swords in the world. No one is looking for you, so whether Bai Zhe expected it or did it unintentionally, the result is that Bai Zhe is saving you. Xiego wondered, Is this related to my inability to take a step now? The old blind man sighed, That's why it's not good for a Taoist priest to have too much aptitude and to reach the summit too smoothly. They all have to repay their debts. Bai Jing's debt repayment is just half a step above. Xiego asked, Where's xianxia? For a pair of Taoist couples who have only cultivated for thousands of years to achieve the true fruit and the fateful mandarin ducks who have been sleeping together, one of them must be a pure sword cultivator in the 14th realm. It's written in a certain ghost novel in Luzhou, Beiju. It's been written for 100 years and it's been 1,000 years of writing. She and xianxia have been together for more than 10,000 years. The old blind man choked for a while, probably because he was disgusted by this woman. His throat moved slightly, he spit thick phlegm on the ground, and then walked away with his hands behind his back. The good student made a hot pot in the house, and the old blind man stepped over the threshold and asked casually, Do you want some dog meat for the bottom of the pot? As long as the disciple nods his head, he will capture that Nen Taoist who seems to be very majestic in Haoran Xianxia from Tonggishao. Li Huai shuddered and cursed, It's the stove, I lost my appetite all of a sudden. The old blind man changed his words and said, What other wild game do you want to eat? Li Huai said, No need, I have all the ingredients ready, there are more than a dozen of them, try something new, it's enough to eat. God knows if most of the masters will grab the heads of the monsters and come over to cut up the meat for fun. The old blind man nodded, sat on the bench, picked up his chopsticks and poked the table. Let's go. Li Huai shouted towards the door, Miss Xia, let's start a team, let's have hot pot together? Xiego just sat on the edge of the cliff, with his back to the thatched hut, stretched out his hand and waved, motioning for you to eat your food. Mrs. Wei chewed slowly, and found that her son and the old man were squatting on the bench. Li Huai asked vaguely. Old blind man Chen Pingan said that he is now in the nascent soul realm. Isn't it terrible that you cultivators have fallen? The old blind man said, generally speaking, a fall is not terrible. For example, it is nothing to fall to the ascension realm 2 times in a row, and it is nothing if the nascent soul falls all the way to the Dongfu. Relatively speaking, it is more terrible for Yupu to fall to the nascent soul, but for that kid, it's nothing. Maybe his ascension process was terrible. The old blind man once saw with his own eyes that young man who was neither human nor ghost, who was idle all day long at the head of the city and had nothing to do. He formed golden pills there and broke them for fun. Mrs. Wei became more and more confused the more she listened. Li Huai said bluntly, just tell me if and when Qin Pingan can return to the upper 5 realms. The old blind man chewed a piece of meat in a copper pot, nodded and said, it's delicious. Li Huai saw that he couldn't ask anything, so he had to pick up a piece of meat for the old blind man. The old blind man said from his heart, Li Huai, back then in your hometown you actually had a chance, and you had a great chance to stay until the end. As for Ma Kuxuan, Lu Xianyang, Guqin, and Song Jisin, they all but relatively eye-catching. In fact, the advantage has not been too great. After all, they have never really approached the height of half a one, but those few mediocre people who seem to be obsolete now, such as the Lu family who almost killed Lu Xianyang, my son, I was the second to see that sissy man in the mountains, and there are a few lowly maids and servants in Fulu Street and Taoya Lane. They all had a lot of opportunities back then. Don't forget the 2 eyeballs that were gouged out by the old blind man himself. Li Huai smiled and said casually, the road I walked and then looking back on the road are all good things. If this is the case, what is there to be dissatisfied with? I think it's good now. Let me walk it again. Will you have to work hard to walk long distances, for fear of taking a wrong step? Well, you are worthy of being my first and last disciples. It's just different from someone. That guy, after about thousands of years, finally reached a high level. Feeling unwilling, he changed his ways and spent all his time thinking about it. He didn't hesitate to go through the long river of time hundreds of times, but he still couldn't win by 1 mud legs in Mud Bottle Lane. There were about 30 other times he beat Qin Pingan to death early, but he still couldn't win against other people, not to mention there were more cases he was still beaten by that cautious Mud Bottle Alley. The teenager was beaten to death with a backhand. The reason why he knew these inside stories was not because the old blind man was in the 14th realm. It had something to do with it, but it didn't have much to do with it. There used to be a wild cat squatting on the bench in the backyard of the pharmacy. Because of old man Yang's extrajudicial grace in its eyes, it could see a courtyard like a big incense burner. The courtyard censer of Sisui Gui Tang is filled with densely clustered burning incense. The old blind man nodded and said, good apprentice. After eating the hot pot, I will teach you some excellent swordsmanship and boxing. You don't need to learn it. You just need to listen and memorize it, and you will be able to succeed. Stop it. If you keep chatting like this, I won't miss the friendship between master and apprentice. Old blind man, go down to the table and eat. Okay, the sky is big and the earth is big, so you can eat the most. Old blind man, I brought wine. How about we have a drink? It's nice. The old blind man took a sip of his drink, turned his head and looked outside, guessing that there was going to be a torrential rain that hadn't been seen in 10,000 years. I remember that not far from the white scene of the girl in the sable hat, there once was a down-and-out scholar from Hauran Xianxia, who stood there talking to himself like a fool. Young and energetic, unstoppable, read all the books, never forget, vowed to teach ancient and modern scholars, poets and poets who have not been able to, and resolutely not let the future generations let go. Ask about ghosts and gods. From now on, you can ask me only about human affairs. It's decided. If you are thoughtful and careful, you can call it Zhoumi, going back to the market passages, Tianmu, tattoo traces, Xinxiang, Sunfall. The Confucian temple has built 3 more ferry crossings for immortals, holding candles, walking horses, and land veins. Relatively speaking, the 3 ferries are located in the northernmost part of the wilderness near the ruins of the Jianqi Great Wall, and the 4 passages connecting the 2 worlds of Hauran and wilderness are located in the hinterland of the wilderness further south. Among them in Xinxiang there are talismans Yuxuan, Pei Bei, the national teacher of the Duduan dynasty, Huolong Daoist, and Baishang of Patafeng stationed here. Baishang returned to Beiju Luzhou because of the need for retreat. In addition, Yuxian of Hadao Xinghe needs to sit outside the sky, so this place has successively added a wave of top-notch combat power, including Fengshua Temple Sword Immortal Wei Jin. Those who are not well known, there is also Wang Wu, an unknown Taoist priest with the Taoist name Jingxing, who is no different from Chao Rong, the heavenly king of Beipingzu, and Su Xia, the sword fairy of Jinjiazu. They were all born after the war. The real swordsmanship in Taoism horrified the world. Just say that the young sword fairy Su Xia has a nickname Su Jun, which is no different from adding the suffix Z to his surname. An Wei Jin got a sword manual presented by the elder sword fairy himself, and the person who compiled this book was Xuanhuan. But even so, it was the first time in many years that Wei Jin returned to the city and inherited Xuanhuan's four-sword intents. It was the sword way that was clearly recorded in the book but made Wei Jin puzzled. In a temporary simple thatched hut, sword immortal Fu Jin, who is Zheng Zhezhong's major disciple, came here in person and invited Wei Jin to be the chief worshipper of the Xiazong of his White Emperor city. Of course, Wei Jin clearly rejected the matter. Although it was expected, Fu Jin still felt a little regretful, lifted the white bowl, took a sip of the wine and drank it down with his head raised. Not long ago he persuaded Wu Shu, a martial artist at the end of Tongyi's Hao, to be the chief guest secretary. Fu Mo has obsessive-compulsive disorder and plans to gather Qi practitioners from hundreds of schools in one sect at the same time. Wei Jin smiled and said, "Drink as long as you drink, don't drop the bowl, it's a white porcelain bowl that I made with great difficulty." Fu Mo laughed and said, "I have to find the candidate sword repairer." Wei Jin asked, "Is that the sword fairy Su Jun?" Fu Mo nodded and said, "Because you and I, as well as Su Xia, are very young, not just young." Wei Jin smiled and said, "It's understandable." Fu Mo asked a very strange question. "Wei Jin, if you have a list of imaginary enemies in your mind, which ones are you least willing to fight against?" Wei Jin shook his head and said helplessly, "No such thing." Fu Mo still refused to let go and said, "Talk about it, let's serve the food and drink." Wei Jin said, "Tell me first. I only have master in my heart, and I dare not be an enemy even if I kill myself." Fu Mo raised the wine bowl, swallowed in one gulp and said, "Change one by one, now it's your turn." Wei Jin felt dejected and drank a bowl of wine. Fu Jin laughed angrily, "She doesn't count. It's really weird, are you Wei Jin really so infatuated? Not even willing to cut off the red rope that he knew belonged to someone else?" Wei Jin was silent. Fu Mo poured a bowl full of wine, so he had to say the name of another person, and drank the wine in one gulp. "Warrior Chao Ci." Wei Jin nodded, "Me too." Fu Mo knocked on the table with an empty bowl. "Please Wei Jianxian, show a little sincerity." Wei Jin pointed to the north. Fu Mo smiled and said, "Wei de Jiangxian, are you playing charades with me?" Wei Jin shook the wine bowl and said in a deep voice, "Qin Pingan, who left the summer palace on the Great Wall of Sword Qi and is not on Luapa Mountain." Fu Tan was a little surprised, thought for a moment, got up and said, "This trip is worthwhile. Up and down the mountain, the water and the sky, the dream and the dream, the host and the guest. True and false, virtual and real, if there are no coordinates in all directions throughout the ages, I am in it, how to establish it." Qin Pingan somewhat understood the mentality of Lu Qin and Zheng Zhuzhong. To be precise, it was a personal experience, not an outsider's sympathy for each other. "So I said to Lu Qiqing, the wind and rain are boundless, my friend cherishes them, not only to the two former fellow Taoists but also to Qin Pingan himself." Gukan asked, "What's going on? People who practice Taoism rarely have dreams." Qin Pingan said, "Just now on the mountain I wanted to take a rest in a bamboo building, but I had a strange dream." Lu Xianying said with a smile, "What kind of dream? What a weird way, talk about it." If it was really the situation where the ghost hit the wall, it would be easy to talk about. Lu Xianying, who is good at dream interpretation, can go to Qin Pingan's dream to have a look. Qin Ping thought about it carefully, rubbed the center of his brows and said softly, "I'm in a daze, I can't remember the beginning of the dream, in fact, it's intermittent and occasionally I know I'm dreaming, but it's like a ghost pressing a bed, just can't wake up, come on, even the intention to wake up is not strong." During the period I used several methods to suppress the nightmare by myself, but it was not very effective, but there were no sequelae. I woke up with a start when I heard your shout. I believe the dream will last for a long time. The first dream scene I can still remember now is that when I was a child I finished playing outside and came back home in the twilight seeing my parents, but it's not the ancestral house in Nipping Lane. I can't say which alley it is. Then I found a key on the ground that seemed to be lost by me. Neighborhood, the pattern of the entire hometown town has changed. Now that I think about it, those conversations and pictures are all fallacies and confusions that are very different from the truth. I had a meal at the home of an amiable old man in a nearby street. Gukan was also at the same table with me. As soon as I went out, I walked through a few alleys. In a certain alley it rained heavily. The building is tall, and somehow it is in Taoya Lane because I can see the peach blossoms on the street through the window, and then I sit in a wheelchair. I couldn't turn my head, didn't see him, but I knew he was tall, and then I tried to escape and the house changed again, which was naturally unreasonable because a patio appeared, but I didn't think deeply in the dream. I jumped down from the patio. It's like falling off a cliff. When I got downstairs, I found a house in all directions. No matter which direction you look at it, it looks exactly the same. When you look up and look at it horizontally, up and down and in all directions, they all form the same house pattern. So there is no way out. Then I dreamed of you, Lu Xianying, dreamed that we were firing porcelain together at the mouth of the kiln, saw that sissy sitting under the lamp and cutting red paper. He handed me the scissors. I vaguely knew that I was already in my 20s at the time, so I asked him where the grave was, and he actually answered, saying that it was buried on the top of the hill closest to the town, and thanked me for visiting him several times. Afterwards, things got even more chaotic. Lu Xianying asked, "During this period, did you dream of Mr. Qi and Miss Ning?" Qin Pingan shook his head. "Not from beginning to end." Lu Xianying nodded. "That's right, deep down in your heart, although they are very important, they still don't belong to the role of keys, and they are not the key to interpreting dreams, just because in your opinion the relationship between you and them reunion is the kind of dream come true that I couldn't even imagine when I was young, but it's not reliable. Fortunately, at least I can be sure that you are really dreaming, not being plotted by someone." Lu Xianying slowly said, "In the dark, whether you know it yourself or don't know it, you are trying to disassemble and digest your entire life, and piece together a new story, so this dream is just a dream as the dream maker in the dream weaved by oneself. This is the ancient and weird of this strange dream. The past is the past, as if walking a new journey of life again. It is strange." At this moment, Gukin suddenly asked, "How can you be sure that you are not still in a dream?" Qin Ping nodded and said, "Yes. I must still be dreaming, otherwise why would I come to see you? Even if you are so close to the truth, it's a pity that I'm still dreaming." When Qin Pingan uttered these words, Lu Xianying's face changed into that of Qin Pingan, and so did Gu Kan's. After that, there were visions again. Lu Xianying, who looked like a boy, turned into a corpse lying in Nipping Lane. He had just been beaten to death, so he was alive and covered in blood. Gu Kan next to him became what he looked like when he was in Shujian Lake. It was also a dead body, but it was shriveled and old. Just a bench. What Lu Xianying, who appeared in Nipping Lane, would say, and what thoughts Lu Xianying would have after meeting Qin Pingan, were all foreshadowing and anticipation of Qin Pingan. It's like Gu Kan deliberately throwing the melon seed shell into Song Jisun's yard. Isn't it a detail in the story written by Qin Pingan? At the top of the half of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Zhou Mi once said that the reason why I can keep hope is because I have never really experienced despair. I don't believe it. If you don't believe it, you have to prove it. If there is any possibility, you have to take precautions. Therefore, in this dream, Qin Pingan used a total of 80 long and short dreams, which are both infinitely closer to the truth and fanciful. More than 36,000 landscapes, buildings, and personnel scenes, all things that reach the boundaries of words and imagination. Qin Pingan used to be unable to think, dare not think, dare to think but can't do it, and can't do it if he lacks mental strength. All things, good deeds, sages, perfect people, those who make up for one's mistakes. Evil, hypocritical, absurd, corrupt, tyrannical, insidious. Do it all. Or be forced to watch all misfortunes happen, or take the initiative to do evil. Vengeance will be vengeful. Even seeing people murder on the road, leaving no one alive. The lifeless Luapa Mountain, just a few steps away, is the dead body, and the entire town of my hometown is slaughtered by me. Well, some of them are caused by me, and I am powerless to change and remedy them. There are also tragedies caused by my own thoughts, tearing off the mask of hypocrisy, and intentionally combining those selfish desires, or failing to keep my Tao heart going crazy, and indiscriminately killing people close to me. There are natural disasters and man-made disasters without warning, and I let me do it deliberately. The 7 emotions are reversed, the 6 desires are rampant, and every ritual and music in Tongyi's Hao is destroyed. A complete defeat is a so-called good thing in the world, a matter of good fortune for Tong. Good learning will lead to official career, a wealthy family, farming and studying heirloom, or a powerful party, a blessing for the rich and unkind, 3 wives and 4 concubines, killing the emperor and becoming the emperor, 3 palaces and 6 there are countless concubines in the courtyard, or among the 14th realm of swordsmanship, and they kill through the entire Aquarius Island with their swords alone, leaving no one alive. The pure freedom of body and mind, good and bad, good and evil, purely follow one's inclinations and cultivation, and walk in the 2 places waveringly. In the middle of the extremes, The various lifestyles of the four situations have been tried once, some even several times. Changed 27 identities: the prime minister who let the king rule, the military general who seeks to usurp the throne and sit on the dragon chair, and the butcher in the market. Or the good guy Qin Pingan who died in a hurry, 35 out of 30, the villain Qin Pingan, who was inescapable from evil and couldn't escape from the maze in the end. The rest are all withered, walking corpses, lonely ghosts wandering in the labyrinth, unable to seek death, unable to seek life. Living would be better than death, and unable to escape. That Qin Pingan who is not free in a wheelchair, the tall weirdo I dare not look back at, turned out to be me. The Tao is 1 foot tall and the devil is 10 feet tall. I still underestimated the demon. Wrong. I am the demon Qin Pingan. Yes, you can. There is no exit from this maze. It's like suddenly picking up a key on the ground and opening a heart lock. The next moment the scene suddenly changed. This Qin Pingan was in the white mist. After looking around, he couldn't help jumping his feet and scolding, "Chui-chan bastard, what's wrong with teaching you? But I want to teach you to destroy your own Taoism, and no one else can do it. Fuck you, you have a mother but no father to teach you, a lowly bastard, a thief, and you don't learn well. Even a person with perfect morals has done it, as well as a traitor full of evil officials and thieves. A rich family who is lazy and does not seek to make progress. Wang has also become one, but he is still not satisfied. Do you have to come to the end of the world when the fructification is completely destroyed, and then you, a saint who comes out every 10,000 years, will be satisfied? You don't know life and death, you don't know the heights of the sky and the earth, you are really lawless, dare to use your name moment. Are you worthy? Qin Pingan, as long as you have a conscience you should stop quickly. Please let me out or you will kill me and finish it all, please. It is useless to abuse endlessly without pain or itching. If it is interesting, but if it is not meaningful, it is meaningless. After all, he is not a real alien demon. Its inner demon is like the pile of broken porcelain in the old porcelain mountain, which is a discarded and defective product. Just because it is still mixed with a trace of humanity. There are also a few Tao friends, who share the same illness and pity each other. One is the warrior of the 11 realms that Qin Pingan figured out. I am about to ask the ancestral family of the boxing fighter. The established exit of the maze is that this person wants to completely disperse the world's spiritual energy with human martial arts, and personally create a brand new world without Qi practitioners. A Qi trainer who is mainly based on sword cultivation and supplemented by the knowledge of 100 schools of thought walks 2 avenues and finally enters the 14th realm. Qin Pingan, a Qi trainer, ran amok with great freedom in several worlds where there are no 15 realms of cultivation. Just killed the female crown Wuzhou, and used the supernatural power of the dove to occupy the magpie's nest, and succeeded in the ancient casting method. The exit path of this maze is to enter the 15th realm, ascend to the sky, destroy Zhoumi, smash the ancient ruins of heaven and rearrange the human world. There is also an old man who is neither a Qi practitioner nor a martial artist. He guards an acre of land. He has studied and served as an official. The last one is Zhoumi, who eats Qin Pingan, and Qin Pingan, who is turned into a guest after Zhoumi, stays away from the world, staring at all the joys and sorrows in the world from a distance, watching all the familiar relatives, friends and enemies who have grudges, one by one. Died of old age, just guarding the ruins of the ancient heaven alone, just like the head of the Great Wall of Sword Qi in the past, only this time it lasted for 10,000 years. One of the mental scenes here. The heart demon Qin Pingan was tired of cursing and he sighed heavily. The body of an ordinary master who has no realm, what he sees at this moment, can see the world in all directions at the same time. On the one hand, 3,000 ancient scholars, led by the most sage masters and later 10 Confucian temple philosophers and 72 sages, traveled the world in a mighty way. One side is like a certain Dharma altar in a Buddhist kingdom, with Buddhist dragons and elephants, eminent monks, golden arhats, layer upon layer, gradually rising up, and finally there are 4 majestic bodhisattvas, and the higher Buddha standing upright. On one side is the Taoist patriarch holding Baiyujing in his hands. In the 12th floor of the 5 cities, countless Taoist priests and immortals stand like blue cranes, and hundreds of spiritual officials stand on the blue clouds, surrounding and guarding Baiyujing. On one side was himself, Qin Pingan, with a smile on his face and a tall figure that made it difficult to tell whether it was the real body or the Dharma form. With his together, he stood in front of him, overlooking the demon who was as small as an ant. The next moment, the size was reversed, the heart demon was as tall as all the mountains in the world, and his body was as big as a star. Chen Pingan, the phantom in the green shirt with his fingers clasped together, raised his head, smiled and said 2 words. The thunder burst out loudly with xianxia in his mouth and the words followed, heretics. The lingering sound lingered, resounding through the heavens and the earth, as if the words heteropathic were uttered in millions of words one after another. This heart demon shattered on the spot, turned into dust, scattered into the battlefield ruins in the center of the maze, and merged into countless bones. Pile up into mountains and build Jinghuan. There are only 80 dreams in total, but the same Qin Pingan may have walked hundreds of times or even 10,000 times. A Qin Pingan with pure golden eyes was sitting on the top of the bone Jinghuan, shaking his head. He seemed dissatisfied with the current results. The progress was too slow, and he said to himself, "It seems that we have to replace a bottom line." Gone. The 6th-floor maze personally arranged, the state of mind is not uncomplicated, and as time goes by, the 9 talisman avatars have seen and heard more and more. According to the content of the book, there are already more than 300,000 outsiders who have formed, at the moment, and more than 2,000 people have been added recently. Killing the thief in the heart is suicide one after another, killing all kinds of Qin Pingan, and himself who can't leave the maze. Floating out of nowhere in a green shirt, with his hands tucked into his sleeves, the real Qin Pingan, who was transformed by a single mind, narrowed his eyes and said, "Have you stopped here?" Facing the bottleneck of the nascent soul realm and the inner demons, there is no such thing as a genius for a cultivator. Only the geniuses among geniuses like Ning Yao and Yu Xian with the talisman, can still wade through the water easily even if they face their inner demons directly. Qin Ping can only, hard work can make up for one's weakness. Yu Xian was on the top of the mountain at that time, and thought it was a joke from fellow Daoist Qin. If the old man could witness this battlefield sight full of bones with his own eyes, he might sigh that what Qin Daoyu said was true and he really treated people with sincerity. Qin Pingan in white clothes with golden eyes laughed at himself. It's almost enough, the old rules, just accept it when you see it. Pure martial arts here are more than tens of millions of punches, and sword masters have practiced swordsmanship and deduced the way of swords here for more than 10,000 years. Even those talisman internal messy means have almost learned. Just now the mind of this demon belongs to the best few among tens of thousands of us, and they all thought of the boundary of the maze, which is the word and the boundaries of thought. Pity. It's a pity that the 9 avatars have been watching people, things and books, especially the avatar of the Qi trainer who intentionally let his thoughts arise and doesn't restrain his mind. His actions are like opening up the world. Therefore, every current Qin Pingan can never touch the boundary. The speed of time passing here is almost negligible, so this labyrinth cage with no exit, as long as Qin Pingan breaks the demons and enters the upper 5 realms one day, it will be endless. What's more, it's a pity that in the world of mind all the swordsmanship, boxing and talismans that Qin Pingan has realized are all attics in the sky and the moon in the mirror. The realm of monks and warriors brought by this needs to be returned to nothingness. Even some mysterious state of mind and wufu mentality cannot be taken away. But it's a pity, it's not without benefits. On the contrary, the so-called pity of Qin Pingan in white is just a big discount. He dislikes the hard work and the harvest is too unrewarding. He just said that some boxing moves are checked for omissions and repeated exercises to the level of proficiency. Another example is the painting of talismans. All the dozens of talismans that Qin Pingan can only say can be drawn and can be painted in the past can be said to have reached the extreme of a state of transformation, and even created more than a dozen large talismans. Pingan took back all his avatars and began to really draw these deduced talismans. Even if only one kind of talisman was feasible, it would be profitable if it was successfully drawn by Qin Pingan. Qin Pingan in Qingshan asked, "Can't you cross the Jade Realm and Immortal Realm in one step?" Qin Pingan in white sneered, "Dreams are naturally possible." There was a long silence, the world was silent. He asked, "Gu can really see that something is wrong with us?" "I can see it, but he has faith in me," he said. "I think we're scary. So outsiders don't know. I think you are scarier." All the things, the past that you do not want to remember repeatedly become forgotten one by one, and become the prison fence that strengthens the I, that confines the divinity. Then don't provoke me, don't expect to separate from each other, and then try to turn the customer into the master. As long as you have this thought, we will know exactly what will happen in the end. He smiled and looked towards a place where the last key of the maze was located. The scene was the mud bottle alley in his hometown, a child carrying a basket and a grown-up self. One big and one small, walking opposite each other, each went to one end of the alley. On the child's side, the vision outside the alley is dim. It may be that after dusk it will be dark or it may be dawn. From Chen Ping's side, you can see the scene outside the alley, occasionally lightning and thunder, heavy rain, muddy roads, occasional snowstorms, snow-capped and moonlit nights or broad daylight. Qin Pingan said, "Then listen to you and accept it when you see it." In the past, countless fire dragons wandered in the territory of the old Lizhu cave. The reason why this phenomenon was explained by Lu Xianying was that Qin Pingan felt that he should not stop at the Jadeite realm. And those majestic golden fire roads are where Qin Pingan used to go. Relieved, he yawned and said, "Then stop at Yupu? Let's fight for the bottleneck of the Jade Raw realm. If you practice so hard, your Tao heart will be grinded by the heavens. The result is only to break the bottleneck of the Yuanying, which seems a bit unreasonable." Qin Pingan nodded and said, "Then create a few more selves, including betraying the Great Wall of Sword Qi as the last hidden official, meeting Firen and Xiao Xian, and starting a wild story." He said with a bitter face, "I have counted the rest. For deceiving the master and destroying the ancestors, do you need to counterattack Howren? So, this is a big book." Qin Pingan said, "It's good if you are happy. By the way, add one more. Just now my own way of interpreting dreams is quite interesting, then add 7 or 8 more dreams. Remember to reserve a few for him on the ground. That's the key. If you miss it, you can figure it out and you have to let him remember it." As for the final maze exit, he thought, the scene. Just set it up like this: butterflies fluttering in the dream, Tao heart is clear and light. As for his, the name is Zhou Zheng, dignified. Is too sloppy Zhou Zhuang? The name seems too common, so let's call it Zhuangzhou. Zhuangzhou cried a lot when he saw Zhuangzi in the body of a butterfly. It's a dream within a dream. He was gearing up, eager to try. This idea is good, it's relatively new and it's feasible. Qin Pingan reminded, "The book in the capital of Yushuan Kingdom, if you think about those details again, their ending is placed 700 or 800 years later. It seems that the book is still too short." He rolled his eyes and said, "Need you to say this?" Qin Ping said with a smile, "As long as you say you, it proves the need." He hesitated to speak. In fact, Qin Ping said that on purpose. He knew it and Qin Pingan knew that he knew it. Definitely, the answer is all in yourself. When he came, he just asked softly, "It's better to refine words than to make sentences. Since you are so devout and you can't break the emptiness and nothingness, don't be a monk." Qin Pingan couldn't help laughing. Every word indeed is burning incense in the temple, pointing out that worshipping Buddha in one's heart is worshipping oneself. Why bother to shave your head and escape into Buddhism? The ends of the world and the corners of the earth, the yin and yang of the avenues and the gloom, the most difficult to keep a good dream, broken by the crowing of the rooster. The guest's eyebrows are sharp, his eyes are clear, and his heart is full of emotions, so he knows that reunion is not a human ability. In the Lost Mountains, Qin Pingan in the green shirt opened his eyes. The sky turned pale, the night was over, the sun was about to rise and the sky was shining brightly. The teacher, whose alias is Qin Ji, was already walking on the country road from the residence in the neighboring village to the school, when he suddenly stopped and turned his head. There was nothing behind him, only the way he came from. It was clear that the sky was cloudless, but Qin Pingan was walking on the road with an oil paper umbrella in his hand, looking up from time to time as if waiting for a downpour. Walking and walking as expected, the world waited for the patriarchs of the 3 religions to take a walk. It's raining. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.